What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with my certified fantabulous, dripping in fantabulousness, thermonuclear AF co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are excited to bring you the number one NBA podcast in the business. Once again, going to talk about playoffs, autopsies, advancements, postmortems, or I guess autopsies and advancements, Nuggets, Timberwolves we were getting to. We're not going to do series by series previews normally unless they're available to us. Grant and I were just talking. It just doesn't make sense. They become dated so quickly, and we're not going to record every single day, even though we would love to provide you with that much content. We end up just going too long, and there's just big picture stuff we want to tackle too. So we're going to do an extensive dive into Nuggets, Timberwolves. Those fan bases, shout out to your teams for taking care of work early. We hate that we're also not talking about Sixers Knicks this week or Pacers Bucks because we've recorded on the days that games are being played. So we're going to get into some general thoughts on those. So you can skip right ahead once we get to those, because those two teams we're recording this before they play on, what is today? Wednesday? Is it Thursday? Grant, what day? It's Thursday. Thursday. So yeah, well, those games will have already happened, but the question that the people want to know, Mr. Hughes, how the heck are you doing?
I'm a little nervous because we are going to talk about trades, and I think
not on this podcast.
Well, eventually today, so it's already bothering me. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it, and like, even though we've admitted it'll be stale, like it feels like we've been ignoring too much of what's actually happening in the real NBA world, just because of the realities of podcast scheduling and release dates and the immediacy of like stale takes with the way playoff series go.
The series that are going on now, like, or just those series, but I don't have like a great feel for Bucks Pacers. I feel like I used to feel that way about Mavs Clippers, and now I have a stronger hold on that. Bucks Pacers, I'm just like, as we're recording this, Giannis and Dame are going to try to play in game 6, but we don't know if they're going to. So thank you for providing us with absolutely no information, Woj. I really appreciated that little news item there. And then that should change the course of the series, but like the ramp up has been very slow. So he's going to go from that to playing. What would that even look like? And then there's the Pacers have this, yes, they've taken care of business at points in this series, but they just have this penchant for playing down to the level of their competition. It's almost impressive at this point. So I don't really know what to make of this series. The Knicks Sixers series, I am torn between, like, if we're fast forwarding in the future, for my mental health, I feel like I want the Knicks to win game 6 and like, let's get into this second round stuff. But this series objectively deserves a game 7.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to jump back to the Pacers Bucks thing. It's like, for many of the series in the first round, I don't know if you do this. I could just be telling on myself, and I think I've alluded to this a little bit, but it's like when a key injury is like the entire, first chunk of your analysis of the series, and it's just like, so like Jimmy Butler for Miami or Giannis for the Bucks or whatever, like it just makes me, there's just not that much to learn, right? Because, or there's not about either team, because it's like, well, if one main guy is not there, then like you're not getting an accurate picture of the team that's missing the star, and you're not really getting an accurate picture of the team that's playing against the team that has a missing star. So like when you're looking for takeaways, like let's say Indiana wins and the Bucks go away and the Pacers advance, and it's just like, I don't know, what do we really learn about the Pacers other than like, I think if anything, I said this, I did a radio hit yesterday, and I said, like, the host was asking me about that particular series, and I was just like, I don't know, my takeaway is like Indiana is not to be taken all that seriously because they just got beat by like Bobby Portis and Pat Beverly. So like that just, it doesn't say anything about the Bucks really, but it says more about the Pacers. So like, I guess my takeaway is like, if you don't just wipe the floor with a team missing its two best players, then I'm, not inclined to take you all that seriously against a theoretically better, healthier team the next round. Like, there's just not a lot to learn. So I think in some ways that's maybe good that we haven't gone like game to game on all these series on this podcast, because like, what's there to say about a series where so many key figures are not playing?
Right. And you probably learn, I think, more about, I mean, you do learn things like, well, how far away are the Pacers if it takes them this long to handle the Bucks, or even if they lose?
That's what I mean. Yeah. You can learn that type of thing.
And we've talked extensively about what Dame looked like independent of Giannis, which is both encouraging and then also, well, wait, like
Like,
what
does it
like,
matter?
is that a thing that we need to worry about moving forward? We did say, for any Bucks fans that are listening to this, we did say that if they're together next year, I think Giannis and Dame are just gonna roll over worlds. I think it's honestly just a continuity thing will help. Uh, the Knicks these games have had the Knicks Sixers more so, but even the Pacers Bucks, like the wild endings, that wild ending in like game 4 was just Chris Middleton, by the way, just can't really move on defense anymore. But that dude is just cold when it comes to the postseason for the most part. Even when there's been in series past when I think they even got steamrolled by Boston, was it one year? But like Chris Middleton's just a god. So like the endings, there's been more separation in Bucks Pacers generally, but like they had that wild ending. And then I really like the Knicks Sixers has been, I called it. Well, I said this about Timberwolves Nuggets is going to be cocaine for the soul. And then shout out to Everything Blacks and Discord for saying that works because I'd put that series up my nose. But like Knicks and Sixers has actually just been like this a shot of adrenaline every second. And we can't harp on it too much, but like game 5 was one of the most bizarre endings I've ever seen. That series has been great, but it also just, you learn stuff about the way Joel Embiid played hurt, where it's sometimes it looks like he can't move, and he's playing on one leg, it feels like, but he can still dominate at points. And I think that like he looks more vulnerable defensively for sure. But then even the Knicks aren't healthy. You find out Bojan Bogdanovic is just done for the year. He's going to be or the season. He's going to be reevaluated in 3 months. And all of a sudden that's a shock to two systems, right? Because you're looking at it, well, if the Knicks make it further, like this offense is going, and it will run out of gas at points. Just what it's relying on Jalen Brunson, offensive rebounds. They're even getting to a point where it's, Deuce McBride is going to close at least against the Sixers over Dante DiVincenzo, it feels like. And then it also is, well, if Bogdanovic is this injured, how much of an asset is his money leading into the summer? Do you all of a sudden think about not guaranteeing his contract? That's a conversation for another day. But Sixers Knicks, if it's over by the time you're listening to this, that's the first round series we deserved.
Yeah, it's really the tone of it all along, because Embiid came in injured and because the Knicks are playing guys 53 minutes or whatever, like several guys were over 50 in game 5. It's just like hilarious to look at the box score. What's part of what's made that series so compelling, I mean, obviously the main thing is the finishes to these games. Maxey's 7 points and 28 or 2 possessions in a row to just like, I'm never going to wrap my head around the end of game 5, which you would have said about, what was it, game 2, which went the other way. But like the idea that both of these teams are just like trying to hold on, like Embiid's gutting it out, and the Knicks are playing fewer and fewer guys, more and more minutes, and just like everyone's exhausted, and you have some really ugly stretches with like tons of turnovers and like not just like mistakes, but guys are just too physically tired to like think correctly. It seems like sometimes, like Brunson had that throwaway late that was key. Embiid had 9 turnovers in game 5.
I thought he had 10, so I looked up who had 10 turnovers in a playoff victory, and he would have been the first since like 2000. I think it was James Harden in 2013 or something like that. But he only had 9. So that was still the first game that happened where you won since that James Harden game, but still.
It's just like, the who's gonna collapse first is like a fun tone to have for the series. And like that's what makes the bursts of like incredible scoring and finishes, and like when Embiid summons
Tyrese Maxey, just the greatest player alive, had the Sixers on his back for.
Did you this series has made me reevaluate my like dismissal of Maxey as the deserving winner of most improved. It's just like he's been
right.
This
right.
That's I'm sorry, Kobe White's not doing this. Like,
it's a regular season award, and we'll have to, once all the awards are done, we'll have to just go through them. Do like we haven't done news in a while, so we'll have to do that at some point. Shout out to Hustle Player of the Year award winner though, Alex Caruso, and Mike Conley winning Teammate of the Year. Aren't the Lakers happy they passed on the chance to acquire him? Winner. Anyway. Where was I? Oh, but Max, like the like the change of cadence when he's getting downhill and the playmaking and create out of that. I did see, this is an evergreen take that we could talk about to get into I can't remember who said it, but they said that Tyrese Maxey is now the face of the Sixers. And to me, that is just unequivocally not true.
Right.
And both emotionally, but also functionally, the Sixers were terrible while Joel Embiid was injured.
Yeah.
They've won the minutes with Maxey and no Embiid for the year, but they were just so like, let's not jump the shark. He's a max player, an all NBA caliber player. That's enough praise to throw
Yeah.
at him at the moment. It's not,
Well,
it's even with the Anthony Edwards stuff where I don't necessarily think it's a rush, but if you're saying Anthony Edwards is the inarguable future face of the league, it's like, no, he can be in the discussion, and that's enough praise to heap upon his performance.
I don't feel like it's going to be a trend, but now we've got two of like trying to anoint someone the face of something, which is just like, that's a term without like an actual meaning. Like what does that mean? It's not like the best, it's not most important, most valuable, like it doesn't, it's like a new way to talk about a player that doesn't require you to support it with like any actual evidence. It's just like, well, he's the face. He's not. Like, I think the stat is that the Sixers have been outscored by like a point per minute with Embiid off the floor in this series, and this is the version of Embiid that like can't move like for half of the game. So it just like, come on, that's not a real thing. Do you have any other thoughts? Like, I feel like we can't.
It's just we've done 9 minutes on it collectively.
I just want to tap. We don't use this enough. We don't tap into your like somewhat dormant, like beaten down by the job Knicks fandom. Like, just how about this? I'm gonna flip it on you, Dan. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm fine. I do think that if they lose game 6, that game 5 performance is one of those that just, I don't want to say come back to bite you because but it becomes haunting in a sense where you were up 6 with 30 seconds or whatever it was left to go. But I'm I think the people say you can't be a fan and cover the league, but like, I do feel like I'm proof that you can, because so many people are shocked to find out about my Knicks roots, where it's they don't detect. If anything, I think Knicks fans are generally more unhappy with my opinions about the Knicks than any other like listeners of the podcast. Yeah. So I don't tend to get as stressed out by it's in the moment. I'll be stressed out maybe, but like leading up to it, I'm not expending as much because I have 29 other teams I need to think about, Grant.
Yeah.
I got 150 trades I need to come up with by 6 p.m. Eastern time. So it's just
so you weren't like walking up and down the street, like breaking people's car windows when the NBA announced that Tyrese Maxey traveled on the 4-point play? Like,
no, but only because I was sprinting while doing it.
Right. Yeah.
But that stuff never, even at the most irrational part of my fandom, and I'm not including like 7-year-old me, that there's a story. I was watching a Knicks Heat game way back in the day, and Alonzo Mourning had 5 fouls. And I was young enough to not know the rule was 6. And so I was like, why aren't the refs making him leave the game and letting him shoot these free throws? So removed from that stage of my life, I can't, we had this discussion. I can't harp on officiating. And look, that shit evens out then with whatever happened in game 2 to whatever you think that they missed with the Tyrese Maxey travel. This stuff just has a way of evening out. So it is cool though to be invested in like the outcome of something. Where I root for chaos for the most part, but this is like one of those situations where you're genuinely torn, and this series deserved a game 7, but is that good for my mental health? Who's to say?
Yeah, I don't have a dog in the fight. Which, by the way, no one should have dogs in fights.
Yeah,
we need to retire that phrase. I'm not emotionally invested in either team, so I want 7 games. And it's okay. You're right. We need to move on because there's a really good chance this is all going to be useless and stale.
What else are we supposed to be talking about today? This is just
Wolves Nuggets. We got a preview. Should
we talk about the Heat Celtics first? Like the teams that just kind of. Oh, and also actually, okay, let's go here. Everybody, the suspense is over. Can we talk about Mavs Clippers since they're going to play again shortly?
Yeah.
What are I have actually more thoughts on this series now than I thought I was ever going to, because it took me a while to get a hold of it. But I'm looking at the Clippers and they feel broken. I don't know how this version of Luka will match up in a later round performance against OKC, where they're going to have a bunch of different other things defensively to throw at him. But I'm just looking at the Clippers, and James Harden has not been bad this series. He's been their best player. The absence of Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook has played very poorly. Paul George has by and large played very poorly. And I thought the Clippers did a better job of trying to be more creative with getting him the ball in game 5. But like the Mavericks defense just wasn't having it. Like Derrick Jones Jr. did a great job on him all game. And then you're looking at the Mavs offense, the counters they have to where the Clippers have thrown some different things at them. But, if they're going to, Doncic isn't hitting his threes right now, which is just mind melting to think about that that the Mavericks are in this situation despite Luka shooting so poorly. But if you're going to play drop against Doncic, he has the mid range game going then. And also, really, I know Daniel Gafford's on some of this too, but Derek Lively's floor navigation inside the half court is fucking incredible. And he has many great moments against the Clippers in game 5. And then also just a Kyrie Irving, the decision making here when the Clippers are going to get 2 on the ball. And then it's true of Doncic, but the Mavericks sort of just making the right decision here. And yes, there's a level of, is Maxey Kleber always going to shoot as well from threes he did in game 5? No, but this is my roundabout way of saying, and I know that the Clippers are missing Kawhi and they had a hobbled Kawhi for 2 games, which then throws their game plan afield as well. But the Mavericks have shown that they can just win in more ways up against more variability than the Clippers can right now. That feels like my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I think I have a similar one. It really struck me in game 5, where it just felt like both Paul George and James Harden it felt like they were running into a crowd when on the rare occasions they actually beat their guy and get into the lane. And it's a symptom of, I think the Clippers just have too many guys that they sort of have to play that give the Mavericks the opportunity to shut off what LA wants to do. So the 2 main examples are you got to play Zubats because that guy, he's played really well and he's important to what they're doing. PJ Tucker, by the way, got off the bench late in game 5. I couldn't believe it.
That was Ty Lue just waving the we're screwed. Right. It's over flag. We're done.
But less so, or to a greater extent than Zubats, it's Westbrook. Westbrook sort of has to play because of the defensive energy he's been bringing and just, or the Clippers believe that he has to play for those reasons. But the fact is he's getting parked in the corner and his guy is just in the lane waiting for Paul George or for James Harden or to lean on Zubats. So it's harder to dump the ball into him or throw him lobs or whatever. And it's just the Mavs don't have the same issue where if you had Exum is playing less, for example, and maybe that's someone that you'd sag off of and do the same thing if you're the Clippers, but there's still just the ability to have Derrick Jones Jr. is going to make enough threes to matter and he's going to ghost cut down the baseline. And it's there's just ways for all 5 of the Mavericks guys to force the Clippers to sort of play honestly. And Dallas's defense isn't being held to the same account because the Clippers just have no choice. I guess you could take Westbrook out of the rotation entirely. And then it's well, I don't know. That's a lot more Amir Coffey and it's a lot more Norm Powell. And maybe that works. Maybe we see that.
To be fair, it feels like and he's been great in this series. There is room for even more, unless you're really concerned about managing minutes. Just play Terrence Mann 40 minutes a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things we talked about coming into the series was the question of, do you believe the Mavericks late season defense, which was so good, is more real than the Clippers late season defense, which was so bad? I think it's fairly clear that the Mavericks defense, I think, is up for it. I don't know if it's the second or third best defense in the league or the best, which whatever date cutoff you want to use, it fell into all those buckets. But it seems legit to me, and the fact that they kind of get to cheat a little bit and expose some of the weaknesses the Clippers have without Kawhi. It's making it kind of an unfair fight. Even look, it's 3-2. So it's not like anybody's getting crushed here, but it's just really right. The simplest thing is, and you said it, is just it's just harder for the Clippers to get the kinds of shots they want and to match up defensively than it is in the case of the Mavs. So it's playoffs always reveal your weak links. That's what they do. And that's what's happening here.
It's also kind of if I told you that the Mavs through game 5 were shooting under this is just one way to frame what's happening. The Mavs are shooting under 34% from 3 and the Clippers are at close to 40% from 3. Would you predicted Dallas is up 3-2 in the series? No, I guess if you knew Kawhi wasn't playing, but even the Mavs defense did a good job of slowing one of the Clippers' biggest strengths without Kawhi is the ability to play faster. And Dallas's defense is just it was able to slow them down in game 5. And look, the Clippers defense has had its moments in this series, but then when its offense isn't clicking, it makes life harder on their defense. I'm interested to see if Ty Lue does make any sort of, I don't want to say extreme, but significant changes to his rotation. I just don't know if Kawhi is still going to be out. Like, I would just juice up the Terrence Mann minutes. Like I would cut down the Russell Westbrook stuff one, especially because if you think he gives you a level of defensive intensity, debatable. I think there's merit. There's also, it could be hyperbolized for sure. Like, he's not making enough shots and he's caused, as you already talked about on the defense, the offensive end, what he makes it easier on Dallas's defense. I did want to ask you though, as sort of a more macro topic of this, does this series, unless the Clippers come back and win, which they're not going to, so I don't care about that becoming dated, print the receipt. If they come back and win, that's fine. They're not winning the series. Does it impact how they go about this offseason at all when you've already extended Kawhi, but Paul George still hasn't signed an extension, James Harden going into free agency? I tend to think that there's just more at stake or more variability when it comes to Paul George. I assume he will have the bigger, broader market than James Harden, so that but if you're the Clippers, I know you're going to go into the Inuit Dome next year and you want these big names on your team to draw in fans, but I'm just sort of wondering, and this goes on, I guess I'm looking at it through the lens of Paul George specifically. Does this change from both sides? If you're Paul George, are you looking at this and saying, maybe I want to be somewhere else where one of my co-stars is more available, or we have not just more depth, but like more stylistic variance in how we can play? And then if you're the Clippers, are you sitting here and saying, well, do we want to give this guy the full boat max? Because I had said yes, and then I said yes again when it was, well, he has all the leverage. Kawhi's injured yet again when it matters most. How are you not going to pay this dude? But then he's sort of playing like this where he's not even the number one option still. You got him a point guard, and you did, look, credit the Mavs, but like PG's shot selection has not been great. And like it took them until like game 5 to really felt like he was working to get the ball. I still think he's a fantastic player, and the Clippers, you can't just lose PG for nothing. You need him. You need a broker, a sign and trade, or get him to opt in and move him somewhere, Philly, New York, whatever. But like, is it more? Is the outcome of this series impacting how you view the Clippers offseason? I mean, it sounds like a dumb question, but they're so rigid in what they can actually do that it shouldn't. But I'm just like, this is a half decade of this stuff.
I had the thought, and eventually I sort of, I don't know. So my first thought watching a good stretch of the game of game 5 was like, man, it's really hard for Paul George to like get all the way to the basket. Like, and then I'm thinking like, he's in his mid 30s, and
I think
like
it's his birthday as we record this is May 2nd, if I'm not mistaken.
So he's 34. Is he 34? Yeah. Okay. So I had the thought of like, forget the Clippers. Like, if this is the Sixers' big potential offseason target that they're going to max out, like no questions asked, like, is he the best guy for that? Like, clearly he's declined in terms of like just pure athleticism and like the ability to generate the best kinds of shots. Again, now part of that is like the way the Mavs are able to defend the Clippers. So like nobody's getting
Derrick Jones Jr., but like sneaky critical free agency decision now where they don't have his bird rights. Are they going to tap in their mid-level to keep him? I don't know what his market will be like, but he feels like a dude that you just need to keep.
Oh yeah, I think so too. But on George, it's just like, I think it should make not just the Clippers, but almost anybody that's thinking about this is our guy, this is our big swing. And really that's just the Sixers. I don't know. So if you're the Clippers, like your alternatives are, because I think if you're the Clippers, your number one choice would be, we extend George at a reasonable number that clearly is not going to be the full boat max that he can get, because that would have happened by now if the Clippers were going to do that. And then you bring Harden back and just hope that, I don't know, health turns around finally, which seems improbable. Like, what's their alternative? You said it. They can't just let him leave. Like, you can't just let Harden leave, I guess. Like, he's there because he intended to get a bunch of money. So like, there aren't a lot of, it's not like, these are kind of first world problems for the Clippers, because like they'll be pretty good if they bring all these guys back and they are motivated to do that because of the new arena. But like, I don't feel like going into next year, if they have George back on a new deal, Harden back, everybody basically there, like, I don't feel like you or I or anyone is going to put them in the top tier contender class, like they sort of were if healthy this year.
this felt like their last gasp in terms of building that goodwill. Not to say that they couldn't catch lightning in a bottle, but they had that run for basically half the season where it's, okay, they've arrived, and then it's still found a way to fail.
Right. Yeah. You can't have the arrival happen in January. Like if they could have played at that, whatever, the number we keep
citing. Doesn't Darvin Ham know it?
If they could play at that 26-5 or whatever it is, like starting in April, cool. Like that would have been interesting. But it's just, yeah, I don't know. I guess it should change. You know, if when the Clippers lose the series, it should probably change their like offseason plans to some extent, but like not in a fundamental way. It can't.
And it's, you can't, like Philly. So the Philly thing is interesting, but I'm asking, I want to, like, is there a version of the Clippers that could be better off if you were able to trade Paul George somehow, whether it's a sign and trade or an opt-in trade? And I'm going through the options, and it's just the Sixers can only send you picks and take Paul into their cap space, Paul George into their cap space. If you're the Sixers, you don't want to do that necessarily because it's, well, then we're giving up cap space and our assets. Right. And we were kind of hoping this could turn into multiple players. Yeah. And if you go through the list of teams he might want to play for, you would have to be prepared to accept picks and then try and either turn those into cost controlled depth or turn around and make another trade, which, by the way, will still be hard because you're probably going, unless you're trading him to the Sixers. Let's use the Knicks as an example. Spoiler alert for a future podcast, everybody. But like, they're going to send out, not dollar for dollar, but like they'll have to send out like $47 million in salary to match the value of his player option if he opts in. So you're still going to deal with the second apron limitations in that scenario. I think I would run it back just because of the absence of other options. But at this point, just the no extension thing is weird. It's ominous. And this is such a weird, a bizarre, sour note for their season to probably end on. And it just leaves I don't know that I ever would have had a good taste in every fiber of my being had they bowed out in the first round of the playoffs, but just the way the Kawhi injury, the Paul George play, some of the stuff from the Russell Westbrook stuff, who, at this point, he might want to pick up his player option rather than trying to parlay his early bird rights into a bigger contract. Cause I don't know why they would give him one. It's just it's transcended fragility. And now it's just uncomfortable, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's hard to see the upside. It's hard to see the version of this team that is different or better than what we got this year. Like,
he's getting to this point where you could envision them doing one of those regular season things again, but the opportunity cost of that is, well, Kawhi will probably not be available in the playoffs, apparently.
Right. Yeah. If that almost is a bad sign if you have that kind of run for them during the regular season, because it's like, well, you're not getting two of these. This is going to be a one-off, and then everyone's going to be too wiped out. And it was,
I can't remember who I was listening to. There was something about it. It was like, you just might need to load manage Embiid and Kawhi from now on, where you play in like 50, 55 games. And I bet you Kawhi doesn't care. But like, so you're just saying, well, you're no longer allowed to try and win any individual awards unless those rules change. We're just ruling you out of that discussion entirely every single year.
Not only that, but haven't the Clippers tried that? Like the Kawhi has been like we've done that. We've taken that approach. It didn't work. We've let him play a bunch. Also didn't work. And then there's the Thibodeau of it all, where it's like, maybe you should just be running everybody into the ground all the time. And if they survive it, then they're going to be able to hold up in the playoffs. Like the Clippers have gone about this every way you can, because like quietly, and it doesn't feel like it sometimes, like this group's been together for a while. Like they've had a lot of cracks at it and done a bunch of different stuff, and nothing. They haven't like figured out the code yet.
In a weird way, though, this series is validation for the James Harden trade itself. Because this is why you want James Harden on your team, because you can't guarantee that your other two stars are going to be available.
I guess. I mean, we're saying this after he was like 2 of 12.
Yeah, but he's had a good series.
He has had a good series. I mean, he won them. What did he win him? Game 2, he won one. I can't remember now. These all run.
He's had at least 2 very, very, very good games. Maybe you could and that's they're already out if they don't get the version of James Harden that they've gotten.
Yeah, they lose game 1 because he had 28, and he had like a stretch. I'm looking back at my notes now. He had 6 straight threes that he made in game 1, and that was a 12-point win. Like you could say he won them game 1, and they hit all those floaters late in game 4. I guess it was maybe game 3. Anyway,
are you ready to talk about cocaine for the soul?
I sure am. We got Denver, Minnesota. about as different of an opponent for the Wolves as you could imagine, coming off of the Phoenix sweep. I mean, we talked a little bit about Denver last time around. Like, what did the Lakers series make you think about the Nuggets? And yeah, I mean, the Wolves are going to test them with size, with perimeter defense, with like so many different, with a star that's like ascending as opposed to just like hanging on. I don't want to get like way out over our skis here, but I'm optimistic that Minnesota is going to like, it's more than a puncher's chance thing for them. And you can take that any direction you want. I think we still both agree that like you got to pick a title winner. It's Denver, but I think Minnesota looks like is kind of built in a way that you can just easily foresee some of the problems that the Wolves can present for Denver.
Yeah, and I think Denver would admit that. And I'm very curious to see how, because you have Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Anthony Edwards, like those are all dudes that Anthony Edwards might get tripped up in the two-man actions with Jokic and Murray. That's not really his strength. It's let me lock in, laser into this guy where there's not going to be a ton of other stuff thrown my way. I just want to guard on ball independent of screens. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, like those are guys that can very much frustrate Jamal Murray. And Jamal Murray is just a postseason legend. There's no 2-game winners in the last series.
Yeah.
But he's dealing with a calf strain. Having time off is certainly going to help. Is it okay, though, if he's not Jamal Murray for 30 of his 40-something minutes to where you're kind of banking on these pockets of detonations from him? And then can you bank on them as readily against a Wolves team that can throw size and length at you? I'm with you in the sense that I think the most popular pick is going to be Timberwolves or Nuggets in 7, where everyone just sees this being a series that goes the distance. And we'll see, I'm assuming even with Chris Finch maybe not being on the sidelines for it, like that, I don't know that would impact the team really at all. But like, I'm so fascinated to see whether what Minnesota does holds up when you get into sort of crunch time, or where it's what the Nuggets have done, or they did a lot against the Lakers, is it felt like they had their stretches of their minutes long stretches of brilliance, and they knew that was enough separation to just win. And you saw it in the way that you could see, like, I'm not a fan of saying this all the time, but like Jokic and Murray visibly shifting their mindset at points. Like you could just sense it during those games. And are the Nuggets going to have more of a wire-to-wire approach to these games against a Wolves team because they view them as more of a threat? I think Anthony Davis did a fantastic job insofar as you can. Like, he made his life difficult. It just didn't matter. Go look at there were times where it felt like Jokic was struggling, and then you look at his stat line at the end of the game, and it's like, what the fuck are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see whether, not that the Nuggets don't respect the Lakers, but whether they take this series more seriously from the jump, to where it's, well, we're not just banking on these second half runs or like separating ourselves in crunch time. And then how does that impact the Timberwolves' approach? And does it even matter, because their defense can be like, if they're able to generate turnovers, and if you don't need to send, like, just the idea that you don't need to send 2 to the ball to guard Jamal Murray is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I think a couple things I'm interested in, so Minnesota has the ability to put 3, if you have Alexander Walker out there, just like elite one-on-one defenders on your best scorers on the other team. And like, that's awesome against a team like Phoenix, who like sort of default to the type of offense that Denver doesn't want to ever play, which is like stagnant ISO, like I'm going to beat you head up. And that, like, the Wolves are just like, couldn't be happier, I think, with like playing a team like that. I wonder how much those same elite wing / combo forward perimeter defenders can have an impact against the Denver offense that's just like hunting movement and the best shot for someone that's in an advantageous position, as opposed to like everyone standing still watching a one-on-one matchup. Like, Denver's not going to, like, Denver does that, and Murray will do that, like if all the other options they've tried on the possession didn't work. Whereas the Suns are like, that's choice number 1, and that plays into Minnesota's hands. So that's something I'm interested in. I wonder what you think. Like, part of Rudy Gobert's, defensive excellence this year was like, man, that guy's moving well in space, right? So like you would say, I mean, I feel pretty good about him like handling the Jokic Murray 2-man game, but I mean, Anthony Davis probably is even better suited to that. And when it mattered, like the Nuggets still got to what they wanted. I wonder what you think about either of those aspects, like the perimeter defenders in a different type of offensive matchup, and then like is Gobert gonna be capable of navigating all the back and forth stuff with Jokic and Murray? And then because you mentioned you're gonna probably try to involve Edwards in that too, just hoping that his defensive development is not yet at the level where in addition to lockdown ISO stuff, he can also
he's probably
make good
reads.
reads.
Agree or disagree? Do you think he's better served? And there's the height thing, so that might factor into this, but is he better served guarding Jamal Murray than he would be guarding Michael Porter Jr. just because the motion that Michael Porter Jr. is going to be in addition to then giving up that size is just not something that Edwards is known for. I don't want to say navigating well, but that's not his forte.
He's not there yet. No, right. There's on ball and off ball, and he's got on ball like down, but off ball running around, like talking through switches and things like that. Like that's another level. My first thought was like, who are you putting McDaniels on? Because I think that's the guy I want, like in the full like clamp down position. But then like, so is McDaniels on Jamal Murray more? Everybody's going to pass everybody off, like because the Nuggets move so much. But
traditionally, hasn't McDaniels gotten the Murray assignment in this matchup? If I'm not mistaken, I guess listeners can correct me if I'm wrong. But
I can't remember. That was my first instinct. Is that's what I would want to do. Just to the length on Murray, who wants to shoot jump shots. Generally speaking, like I like that a little. Like not that you can hide Edwards on somebody else, but like you could put Edwards on like Gordon, I guess, if you wanted to. And if you're comfortable having Cat guard Kevin Durant, you should probably feel okay about him guarding MPJ. Like the matchups are going to be really interesting. And like which ones.
So you don't think they're going to go the route of just kind of like Rudy for AG so that he can protect the paint, and then you're going to have throw Towns at Jokic like they've done in the past?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like I'd like the idea of because then my earlier question is kind of moot because you're not really involving Gobert in the 2-man stuff, and you can just have him be a backline helper. Yeah, I don't know what you do. I think because we both think this series might be fairly long, you're going to see a lot of permutations probably.
I do think what we see in this series from the Timberwolves perspective is that I don't know how I want to flesh out the final, like the fifth member of it, but this feels like a series in which, I mean, I think we know it, not that Karl-Anthony Towns will be marginalized, but like they're going to lean heavily on the Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards together minutes. And then you could flesh out from there just because of what against at least Denver's, if we go back and look at it, I know that starting can make it a little weird, but looking at what lineup of the Timberwolves plays the most against Denver's top 5, it feels like it might be the Conley, Gobert, and then Naw with Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels rather than having Karl-Anthony Towns in there just because of all the different things you can do defensively with that group versus Towns. Whereas again, he's defended. He could still be slow, but like his defense has probably been as good as it's been for his career most of this season. Yeah. So, but like that's like I think that's kind of where I'm at, where how they'll approach trying to gum up Denver's offense, and maybe you'll see them take more lineup chances or vary them when Denver has more second unit heavy options there. So they have so many different levers to pull, which I think really bodes well. But Denver's offense is such a machine from so many different levels and areas and aspects to where even you could say, okay, hide someone on Aaron Gordon. It's like that dude, the way he will move off the ball, and it's just like abrupt. It's not like constant motion, but it's just like abrupt. And then the way that he's able to even make plays with the ball, whereas as a passer there, it's going to, I've been using this phrase a lot during the play, stress test the Wolves defense for sure. And, they're another thing that I'm going to be interested to watch is, can they do enough on the offensive end to make sure that their defense is set to not where it's okay, Denver's not going to be a team that lives in transition, but you look at the stuff where they're getting into their sets maybe quicker and you're still in the half quarters, it's semi-transition, that's just going to be easier for Denver to do if it's working off a Wolves squandered offensive possession, whether it's a turnover, missed shot, whatever.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there. I just wonder what Minnesota can do offensively that's going to really concern Denver, like or that's going to be like we can go to this well over and over. We're going to get good shots. Like that's just kind of a macro take on the Wolves because their offense was of either side of the floor. Their offense was the relatively weaker one during this season. And like, I think a lot of the thinking going into the Phoenix game and the reason that Phoenix series and the reason Phoenix was so good against Minnesota during the year was like, the Wolves just didn't have enough offensive consistency or like enough stuff to go to really, I guess, to just keep up with what Phoenix was able to do, like in a rock fight type of a game. If it came to that, I struggle beyond like Edwards just being great in an individual way. Where's Minnesota going to like, we need a bucket. Like what sets are we running? Like who are we attacking on Denver? Like, how are we scoring? And like, that's kind of an unanswerable question because it's been one that the Wolves haven't really successfully answered all season because their offense just wasn't that good. It used to be like, oh, we're going to get Jokic involved in as many pick and rolls as possible and make him move. And we may see that, but I struggle to find a clear like lifeline offensively for Minnesota that doesn't involve Edwards, taking even a further step forward as like, well, this guy is good enough on his own to
I do think so. If you have what could help them is so Jaden McDaniels just attacking off the dribble more in that first round series. If the Nuggets are going to give him the same type of runway, that's something you can hope persists. And there's also, we can't forget about karl-Anthony Towns, who is, I don't know if I would call him wonderfully chaotic, but he's definitely enjoyably chaotic to where it's like in the Sun series, you end up with, a small on you, but you're going to settle for a 3-pointer. You end up going up against, Kevin Durant and it's, I'm going to try and like maybe drive and settle there. But then there's also times where he will follow it all the way to the basket. So his driving game, I think, will be super important to Minnesota's offense. Not that Denver's going to give him room, but if there's switches or if there's a mismatch, is he going to be able to punch that? Not just throw karl-Anthony Towns in the post, which is just not a huge part of his game anymore. It's, can he attack, like get by these, like if he has someone who's smaller on him, try and punish them by it's not these blazing fast drives, even though he does have that speed, but it's being a little bit more physical with that. And so I still think he will do a better job, it feels like, of maybe getting rid of the ball. Sometimes he'll throw it to people that don't exist, but can he read the matchups that he's going to have and the space that he's going to have and then make the right decision in terms of how to attack, whether it is launching for a three, or this is when I need to stop and take a jumper. This is when I need to try and follow through to get all the way to the basket, because that is their second offensive lifeline. karl-Anthony Towns is still just an incredible offensive player. Mm-hmm. And I think that people forget that. The meniscus injury that, of course, derailed part of his season. And then he comes back. He doesn't look super right. And again, he had such a weird, I'd call it a weird series against Phoenix. But then you go back and you look at the numbers and it's, all right, well, karl-Anthony Towns averaged 19 points a game and shot, 52.9% from three. I'd probably like to see that volume come up. Like, Minnesota's not this super high volume 3-point shooting team, but I think they need that volume against a Denver team that also, while they might not be winning the 3-point battle on a night-to-night basis, they could just be so lethal in the half court that there are going to be nights where your defense just isn't enough. And so can you offset any of that variance and separation by getting up more of your own threes? Just because when I look at the Wolves and when you think of the Nuggets, they have at least guys you can envision as caps lock shooters, where it's Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray. Jokic needs to take more threes, but he will take them. And then Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, not shooting well right now, but we know that should normalize. When you think about that for the Wolves, Anthony Edwards has the volume. Like, you don't consider him a caps lock shooter. And he shot the hell out of the ball, 44% in round one. There's really just karl-Anthony Towns. And to me, it's just a little, not uncomfortable, but I find it bizarre when you look at it. It's okay. Well, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker's just getting up way more threes than karl-Anthony Towns right now. And ditto for Mike Conley, and Towns averaged fewer minutes in round one than they did. But still, that's just like, to me, when you're this is my long-winded way of trying to answer your question. Your concern, the answer needs to be Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know if it necessarily will be.
Yeah,
And
it
especially
has
in
to
this
be.
matchup.
Otherwise,
Yeah, because but if it's not going to be him, I did just mention Jaden McDaniels and what he was able to do. I'm sure he will have that type of space. Like he's been on a shooting seesaw all season. And so even if he gets the threes up or if he's attacking off the dribble, is that something you call bankable? And no, it's not with Jaden
No.
McDaniels. And even Naz Reid saw his role diminish a little bit in round one. Has this become a Naz Reid series? Because while the Nuggets are big, I think Naz Reid is versatile enough to where you consider him sort of a fringe wing. It's not sort of, we saw Phoenix downsize in a way that could marginalize him, and Denver won't do that. But at the same time, the way they play with size is not the way other team plays with size, because there's nothing traditional about the size that they play.
Yeah, I think, I it's just like one of the things you would do typically as Minnesota when your offense is just not at the level of your opponent is you'd shoot more threes and make it a higher variance game. And like, it's other than Cat, there's nobody you feel great about that strategy with, right? Like it's just another way. If it goes bad for the Wolves, it might just be because they sort of have to play the Nuggets on more like even terms, and they just can't get the 3-point volume or can't get enough of it from anybody that is actually going to make them, So like, I guess what I would say is I can imagine like one or two like pretty ugly blowouts in favor of Denver because the Nuggets are just like, happy with if Minnesota goes high variance and tries to get up a bunch of threes and just can't hit them. Like, that's one way I could see some games swinging in this series. I don't know. You got anything else? Like
I have two things that are relatively quick, and I feel like we focused a lot on the Wolves. We mentioned Michael Porter Jr. in our previous podcast if the Nuggets beat the Lakers. That's like, if he's going to continue to shoot like this, that can almost alleviate any concern you have about Jamal Murray's calf strain or the Nuggets and this whole act of, we're fine going into halftime without the lead and we'll just come back, because the way that he's playing. The other thing too is, and I understand these will not be a huge sample size, because the sample size on this for the entire Lakers series, so 5 games, was 71 possessions played outside of garbage time without Nikola Jokic. What is going to happen during the 8 minutes or so per game that he is on the bench? And specifically against this Timberwolves team, are they better built than most to abuse the Nuggets during those minutes? Because you're going to default. I wouldn't think it'll be like a DeAndre Jordan series. You're going to stick with your Aaron Gordon at the 5 model. Those lineups against the Lakers ranked in the 0th percentile of offensive efficiency.
Yeah.
Life's not going to get any easier against the Wolves. And so how does that end up looking for, because that's not, when you have Aaron Gordon at the 5, it can be effective, but that's not the best lineups they're throwing out there. It's, and even just whatever lineup you want to see with it, it's probably going to be Gordon, Watson, Brown, Murray, maybe KCP's in there. Do you sprinkle a little bit of Michael Porter Jr. in there? If it is any version of that, and I'll go on a limb and say, just because of the way they like to use KCP and Jokic together, that their most used non-Jokic lineup will be Gordon, Porter, Watson, Brown, and Murray. That's my prediction. That's not a lineup that's built to generate all these mismatches on offense. And so you're not going to scare the Wolves, is my point, into changing the way that they have played all season. I'm not saying the entire game can shift on that, but I do think this is going to be a series for the Nuggets where it could get harder, a lot harder to, I don't even want to say survive, but withstand less damage during the non-Jokic minutes.
Yeah, my head went to, so if you've got Gordon at center, you sort of must have Edwards in the game at that point for the Wolves, because I think you want to call up Gordon's guy and like kind of weirdly involve him in screening action. Gordon, I think, is a phenomenal like 5-position isolation defender. So if they switch it and you get Gordon on Edwards, like, first of all, sign me up. I could not be more excited for an individual matchup than that. But you pull Gordon out of the lane, then like, if you're, I guess, disciplined about things, and Edwards does do as good of a job getting off the ball at the right times as you did in the first round, like, then there's no rim protection there, and you don't have to play the high variance game, and you might be able to get some paint points. You might be able to get some cutters, some other, side pick and rolls as the ball swings like that. So I'm just echoing your point. Like, those are obviously the minutes where I would be deliberately making sure I had Edwards on when Jokic was off, just because like the advantage you create there potentially is just so much bigger than. And look, Edwards might just play 45 minutes and Jokic might too. So like I don't know how much of a swing this can have, but if you're in Minnesota's position, those marginal advantages, even if it's a minute or two per game, like you have to capitalize on those. Cause I do just think generally speaking, it's hard for you to find like ways through offensively.
Do you have any
Yeah,
concerns
I
about
think
how?
that's a key thing.
Do you have any concerns about how the Nuggets will ultimately defend Anthony Edwards? I think KCP is clearly a tougher matchup than anything Phoenix could throw at him. But
Mhm.
during the regular season, and the sample is actually quite extensive, the Wolves averaged as a team 1.32 points per possession when KCP defended Anthony Edwards. And that's not, it's not just Anthony Edwards scoring, it's for the entire team. And I think KCP is still one of the more underappreciated defenders in the league. But that is something just because of how physical Anthony Edwards and explosive he could be. I thought KCP had a heck of a defensive series against the Lakers. I'm just wondering, do you get to a point where, okay, if you put Denver's defense, I think Denver's defense is probably most vulnerable when it's put in rotation. And I'm now wondering, I don't like, there was a level of concession, it felt like in the Lakers series where that was just okay, like whatever, we know LeBron exists. But like Anthony Edwards might be built to create a level of chaos that they didn't have to deal with in the Lakers series. And so it's, you can't really pull do we have Gordon go at him from the jump, or are they going to go out of their way to make sure that Gordon isn't involved in the two where it's, if you're going to have someone screen for Edwards, it's anybody but who Gordon is defending.
I think that's right. I think, one big like swing or pivot point in the series could be because you don't want Jokic if you have Edwards on the ball and the Wolves are going to just set high screens for him. You really don't want Jokic being involved in that, to be in the drop with Edwards having a head of steam to either go right at him or pull up. And so then it's like, well, you probably just got to put two on the ball and get it out of Edwards' hands. And then it's like, I mean, Rudy Gobert catching the ball on the short roll and having to make a decision or score? Is that going to be like just why the Wolves can't get anything done? Because I think if you're Denver, you want as many of those situations as you can get where one, Edwards no longer has the ball, and two, Rudy Gobert has it kind of on the move, having to like score or make a decision. Like that's, but then, again, you don't have to have Gobert. Like there's so many, that's going to be a really interesting back and forth, is like, how does Denver make it so that Rudy Gobert is having to be like a big factor offensively? And then how do the Nuggets move bodies around so that they can like, there's just that I think is going to be a huge like pivot point. I keep saying that, but in the series is like, what are you going to make Rudy Gobert have to do offensively if you're Denver, and how extensively can you exploit that?
And I think maybe one problem with Denver is that if you do try to increase your versatility or defensive aggression from a talent perspective, where it's, well, we could play Peyton Watson or Christian Brown. I think Christian Brown did okay on Anthony Edwards this year. I probably didn't see enough of it. And by the way, as host of the best national NBA podcast in the business, look at the charts. We're higher than number one. I don't even know how that works out. I want to implore fans, we're not going to read too much into what happened during the regular season. It's not just a matter of, okay, well, who was available? The good teams are just changing all the stuff that they do in the playoffs anyway. And so you can sit here and tell me, I mean, this is different because they split the season series this year, but I don't want to cite like these regular season numbers. I'm just anecdotally, you could say, I felt like to me, Christian Brown held up okay against Anthony Edwards. Anything you do, not only is it one, you get into the matter of, okay, well, if we're playing Brown with a bunch of starters, who are we pulling?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're making an offensive concession there. No matter whether it's Peyton Watson, whether it's Brown. If you're pulling Michael Porter Jr., certainly. If you're pulling Aaron Gordon, okay, maybe not, but you're probably hurting your defense in that regard. I would be interested to see, though, because you mentioned maybe mirroring Edwards' minutes to AG at the 5, making sure he's on the court during those stints. I think I'm absolutely making sure that maybe both Watson and Brown, because if your offense isn't going to be even close to elite or average without Jokic anyway, I might just make sure that both of those guys are on the court then, so that we have all these different types of looks to throw at Anthony Edwards.
I think to your point, like Mike Malone does not like to play Brown and Watson together because of the offensive issues it creates. But I think that's a really interesting idea of like, well, we know we're going to get, we know we aren't going to score without Jokic, so we may as well just over-index on defense.
Let's lean into it. Get some DeAndre Jordan in there.
Yeah, whatever. Hope the 3 minutes you play without Jokic are like 4-2 Minnesota, as opposed to like, 10-4. Like, just keep it slow, keep it ugly. Let that clock, like that kind of thing. That's an interesting way to go. Again, it's. I think this is a long series. If you had to say, I mean, it's kind of obvious because we're just so in the bag for Denver and have been all along. But like, I don't see the way that this is a shorter series that Minnesota wins. Like, it's we'll know more after game one and we see some matchups. But like, it's just.
I think if it's a shorter series, it's because that Minnesota wins. I would look at, okay, well, what is Murray doing? How is that calf? And then did Denver's 3-point shooting just never normalize? Because you go back and look at the series numbers against the Lakers. Michael Porter Jr. shot 20 of 41 from 3. That dude is ridiculous. Murray, 29.4%. KCP, 28.6%. Jokic, 33.3%. Reggie Jackson, 30.8%. Peyton Watson, 30%. Aaron Gordon, 1 of 10, so 10%. So I think, and you look at Christian Brown, barely took any. He was 0 of 9 in that series. So just Justin Holiday, 1 of 9. I didn't realize Justin Holiday played that many minutes to launch 9 3-pointers in that series. So that is not the recipe, because I don't think the Wolves can just be like, we're going to make sure that Denver doesn't make their threes. Other teams should do that. But that would be okay, Murray doesn't have a good series because of the calf. Not able to create the separation or hit the difficult jumpers that he was still hitting by the end of the Lakers series when it mattered most. And Denver overall, their 3-point shooting kind of never progressed to where we know it could be with the talent that they have on hand.
Yeah.
To that end, who you got?
I was just gonna say Denver in 7. How about that?
I'm gonna go Denver in 6. I think anyone who's listened knows that I respect the hell out of what the Wolves has done this year. And I could see this. I want it to go 7. I'll be rooting for 7. I still just think that we're underestimating the gear that the Nuggets are able to hit. And I'm not going to keep coming back to this but there was a very dynastic era Warriors vibes to them understanding that we only need to play our peak basketball for minutes at a time to create separation. You know what? If we need to elongate, extrapolate those stretches, we will. And I don't like boiling it down to like they will flip a switch. That's not what I'm saying this is. And I think that Minnesota's defense could really gum up the works if they tried. But no defense has ever fully gummed up the works. Like, look at what just happened in the Lakers series, where you had all these things going your way, and the Nuggets were just still able to get what they needed during the highest leverage of moments. And you see the shift in mindset from Jokic at points. I think this is just going to be a series where we see more peak Nuggets for longer stretches is basically what I'm getting at. And that's just not offensively. If this gets into a fight of which team can stop the other's offense more, as much respect as I have for Minnesota's defense, the answer is not Minnesota, just because Denver's offense is a fucking killer.
Yeah. I think I agree generally with that. And it's kind of just like, I think it's a testament to Minnesota that not only is it fair at peak levels offensively more often, but like it will have to, because it's not like the Lakers series where, all the perimeter shooting's going cold for long stretches and you can get away. I think Denver's going to have to bring pretty close to like its best stuff most of the time to beat the Wolves, which is like, that's exciting, because that's not the case against the Lakers. Obviously, like the Lakers just beat them once in a dozen tries or whatever it is.
What was your hesitation? Were you thinking about Wolves in 7, or were you trying to go Nuggets in 6?
No, if I were going any other direction, it would have been Denver in 6, probably. I want to give the Wolves credit. The more I think about it, the more I am convinced that like Minnesota has a couple elements, the defense being legit and Edwards kind of being someone that there might not be a solution for a game or two, that they could push them all the way. But you like forced to choose an alternative, it'd be Denver in 6 probably. I can't get all the way there with Minnesota.
and I'm not trying to give out the, attaboys here. It would not shock me though if the Timberwolves won this series. I'm picking the Nuggets in 6. If you want me to pick them in 7, it would not surprise me if the Wolves won this series. I think that's the best form of praise I can give, is that I consider the Nuggets head and shoulders above basically everyone, but because of the way they match up and what Minnesota's done specifically on defense this year, what Anthony Edwards is doing on offense in general, it just wouldn't. If you told me that it's Timberwolves in 6, and you told me everyone in Denver was healthy, I'd probably be a little. It just wouldn't surprise me.
Well, and maybe this is the best attaboy for Minnesota overall, is like if it were OKC, I'd feel more confident about Denver. If it were the Clippers or the Mavs, I'd definitely feel more confident about Denver. And that's like, I don't know, in a vacuum where I'd rank all those other teams, especially OKC versus Minnesota, but like for purposes of playing the Nuggets, Minnesota is the best you're going to do in the West. I think that's pretty clear.
Let's talk some Heat Celtics. I feel like we should start with the Celtics just because I don't like this team now, to me, and this is coming from someone who would still pick the Nuggets in a series if they two met in the finals. How do you beat the Celtics? Is it just you need to have the night that the Heat had in game 2 where you win the 3-point, you just hit so many threes that's how they have. Kristaps Porzingis is out right now, and they just have so many different things that they're able to throw at you, and the ability to just recognize or how to meander their way to mismatches that they want. It's not just, well, like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown will go hunting. Like Al Horford will create those things for his teammates to get there. I'm just watching the Celtics, and I know they should have probably taken care of the Heat sooner, but what they did to them over the latter half of that series, where they just absolutely murdered them, it made me a bigger believer, and it probably shouldn't have because it was that version of the Heat. But like, what are you supposed to do with this team? I will say this because of what else is happening in the East as we record this, whether they end up facing the Knicks or the Sixers or the Bucks or the Pacers in the conference finals, if they do not come out of the Eastern Conference, I'm not trying to take away anything that these other teams might be capable of doing. It's a huge upset. There's just, I don't know how you talk me into which team right now is actually healthy enough and built to compete with the Celtics in the East.
That's the thing. Like, as you're projecting matchups for Boston, it's like, well, okay, either they're going to face somebody that's got a hobbled star, or they're going to face a team, which they will next round, that's just like hasn't done anything, whether it's right. Like, by the way, like awesome defenses. So that's like, okay, well, they can maybe slow. It's just like, I think it's, I don't know. I don't know how many calories we want to burn on like, oh my God, Boston's really good. Like they proved it all year. I do think the Porzingis injury takes away, because let's say, among other things, like one of the main differences that elevated Boston this year was the Porzingis piece. Like he's kind of the thing that keeps them from being their worst selves, which is the like pound the dribble, maybe one pass, 2 passes around the perimeter. We don't pierce the paint. We're hunting jumpers. Like that's when you're criticizing the Celtics, like it's that offense that like is just has the bullseye on it. And Porzingis' ability to just post up switches is just enough of a new wrinkle that it's like, okay, this is an elevating factor for Boston. And if you don't have him, then I think there's more danger of Boston reverting to its, what we've all hated so much about the Celtics in the last few years, how things gum up offensively. And there's just not. Now, look, like having freaking Derek White able to just make 5 threes a game and score 38 and just look like an all-star, like that's different. And Drew Holiday adds another element, but like there's a scenario where Boston without Porzingis looks a little too much like its past versions of itself, which like, by the way, made the finals and like it's still really, really good. But if you're just trying to punch holes, like I think the Porzingis injury, maybe other than Tatum, is the most significant for purposes of the playoffs that you could have on Boston's roster. So like that's something. Is Cleveland or Orlando going to be the team to exploit that? And is, New York, Indy, Milwaukee, Philly capable of exploiting that in the conference finals? Like, I don't know, probably not. But it does like based on how they played against the Heat, is like this team is unbeatable. Again, the Heat were not like a complete team, but I think the Porzingis thing is and like he's gonna miss at least the next series. It sounds like from all the reporting. So and like who knows how he'll fare when he's back. Like it's like it's not like the guy comes back and he's immediately like, okay, we're good. It's everything's the same. It's like, well, there's a ramp up and re-injury risk and all that other stuff. It's worth like monitoring if you're trying to find reasons to like not just pick the Celtics to roll through everybody.
The only question I have is Derek White, the max he can get in the first year of an extension is $27.4 million. If you're the Celtics, I know they have their second because you're offering it. Are you signing it if you're Derek White?
I'm very happy in Boston. I think I'm signing it. I want to be there. How about that?
I think it's a number where it's borderline. Where could he go on the open market next summer in 2025 and get more? Sure. Would the situation be as comfortable or as ideal? Maybe not. So I think if they give him like the actual max extension, I think 4 years and 123 is what it would end up being total, like his deal. I think you would probably sign it. You better offer it, is all I'm going to say. That dude is, my God.
Yeah. It will feel like it's right on the border of like, oh, what a screaming deal for Boston. If they get him at his absolute max, they can extend him for. What a long way we've come with Derek White. I feel like, have you always loved Derek White? Even like Spurs Derek White, he was just such a popular, like, oh, this guy, you don't know about this guy. He's really good. But then he exceeded even that.
Way back when, that was one of the gauges for whether you watched or knew basketball was, do you appreciate Derek White when he's out there sometimes putting up single digits, but understanding what he does. Yeah.
And then like also, by the way, the Spurs did not sufficiently appreciate him because they should never have traded him. His level up has really been something. He's another guy. It's like, how did I think like Kobe White and Alperen Şengün and like Jonathan Kuminga, and I ultimately picked Jalen Williams, but like, man, Derek White got a lot better. That guy's just, we need like you know what we need? An almost improved team. How about that?
Ooh.
That's what we should do. Let's change the award. We do all NBA and all defense. What's the difference? All rookie. We got all everything. We need almost improved. Participation trophies for everybody. How about that?
So the Heat, they're in their offseason. I was laughing at Eric Spoelstra saying that he was like, I'm probably not going to watch any other of Boston's games this year, but they're fucking wild, is basically what he said. So here's one thing. It's more of a where the Heat go from here. And I saw a lot of people, it starts with Jimmy Butler, who's extension eligible. I saw a lot of people up in arms about, well, if he's signing the extension, why are you going to commit so much money to him? There's like a scenario where it's the way it's being framed. The extension that he apparently wants is he would decline his player option and sign a 2-year deal. And so I saw people freaking out about the numbers. If he goes that route, he gets a $2 million raise off of his player option and then an additional season. And so like, you're not like, I understand he's old and it would take him through his age 37 season. If you don't want to extend him, I get it, but let's not pretend that like, well, if they give him an extension, it's entirely ruining their future. And it's like, just like kind of extending it by a year, basically.
Right. And he could sign a 1-year extension too, by the way, like if you really wanted to do that, like it's hard to avoid thinking like, man, Butler's 35, like it is a mistake to extend someone at that, but it's like, what else are you doing if you're the Heat? Are you trading Jimmy Butler? Like, it's hard to imagine that. The other guy, Bam Adebayo, is actually like half of the Heat's rotation is extension eligible, but Bam is the no-brainer. If he's willing to do it, you max extend him for, I think he can do 3 more years. And then like, he's like the cover for if Butler really does decline, whether he gets an extension or not, you still have Bam in the middle and your floor is like pretty high if he's in there. But that's like the no brainer. I think the Heat, if anything, go to him first and say like, you're our top priority.
They're just in a weird spot though, when you're trying to look at how they move forward. So they're basically assuming Kevin Love picks up his player option. I'm assuming they're going to guarantee the contract for Orlando Robinson. They're going to be basically at the first apron inside $5 million of it. And that's without thinking about, well, are we going to pay Hayward Highsmith? And I know that sounds like Hayward. I know his name is Haywood Highsmith. Thank you, everybody. And Caleb Martin, by the way, who I would expect to decline his player option. And so it's like, you might be limited in terms of everyone's talking about the Heat going star hunting now. You gave up a 2027 first round pick for Terry Rozier. So now you have like one fewer first round pick to offer. And okay, you have some salary matching tools, but Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, and Duncan Robinson, where if you're trying to take back a big number, those are the combination, like that's the combination of 3 players that you need to move. And what's the big name that you feel comfortable with? Would you feel comfortable with going out and getting Donovan Mitchell? Yeah, sure, probably. But what the fuck is the offer to Cleveland? It's Terry Rozier and Duncan Robinson, and then you need to take back other money and you're giving them picks. And then how much better is your team where, okay, well, we just lost one of our better, I know Duncan Robinson's dealing, back stuff during the postseason, but we lost one of our best floor spacers and someone who's improved a great deal. We lost another good floor spacer in Terry Rozier, bringing in Donovan Mitchell. I'm going to frame it this way. They're limited in what they could do. You should try and keep Caleb Martin, but are they willing to pay through the teeth for this team? I don't know if Mickey Harrison's going to feel that way. Is it more likely then that you have to pick one of two? There's no middle ground where they just run it back, Grant. You have to choose one of these.
Okay.
Is it more likely that they acquire a big name, whether it's a Donovan Mitchell? I've seen people float Trae Young, whatever you have. And they have Jaime Jaquez if they really want to get nasty. I don't know who the player, if Kevin Durant requests a trade and the Heat want to get involved on that, is it more likely that the Heat acquire a star or that they trade Jimmy Butler this offseason?
Acquire. I think it's just that's the Heat's wiring. And like you mentioned Jaquez, I think like Jovic showed enough in the playoffs and down the stretch of the regular season to be like, all right, that's not just a throw in necessarily. So you could give somebody 2 young players with him and between him and Jaquez. I don't think Terry Rozier's contract is like 26 or 20, almost 25 next year, 26 year after.
He's I just don't understand what the point of negotiating the final year of his deal was, where it's $24.9 million of his salary is guaranteed. His entire salary for 25-26 is 26.6. I need to understand what the logic is behind if we waive him, we save $1.5 million.
I don't know. But even Hero, like 29, 31, 33 are his next 3 years. Like that's a little more than I want to be paying Tyler Hero, I think, given the injury stuff and given the kind of the one-way game. But like they have salary ballast and they have young guys. And I think 2 picks they can trade. They can trade 24 on draft night, and they got obligations to Charlotte and OKC and stuff that push back another pick.
They can trade 3 if they frame it as first allowable and they're immediately expiring, because so they have their own 2024, right? So you trade that draft night after draft night. Whatever.
28 or 29, depending.
Well, can't you trade? You could trade 29 and then you could trade 2031. I don't know if I would.
They're not second apron, right? Or no, that
2032 is the draft where it would be locked. So they have 3 first round picks. They can include swaps. So if you want, they would have a real Kevin Durant offer if he was available, just because I'm assuming Kevin Durant would have some sort of say in where he goes.
Kevin Durant is always happy though. Kevin Durant never wants to leave where he is.
I just don't know, you're going to do that. And then you're still tethered to this Bam being only, 26 and change, about to turn 27 shortly. That helps you. I just don't know what the move is. You know what this wouldn't save Minnesota money. If you wanted to save money as part of this, you get another team involved. But if they were to look at moving Karl-Anthony Towns, this would be because doesn't Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson kind of make sense on Minnesota? Yeah. You could say that they would prefer Terry Rozier, but so 2 of those 3 guys on Minnesota where you're kind of we've decided, we want to split up the Karl-Anthony Towns money. I don't think they should do this, but that might be a player where the Heat don't have to bankrupt their draft equity. And I know they have Jovic there, and I know that they have Jaime Jaquez, but you can play Karl-Anthony Towns and Bam Adebayo together. No problem. Sure.
Yeah, Bam unlocks a lot of things option wise for a second big. That's that's a clean. That's cleaner than Gobert and Towns for sure.
I think what the issue with that is, it still feels like they need an advantage creator type of guy, which I think is why people are. I don't hate Trae Young for this team. I just getting the math to work, and I get it for it to make sense for, I guess, Duncan Robinson and Terry Rozier. It feels like, and I hate saying this because I think Tyler Hero's the better player, but the harder fit when it comes to a Terry Rozier. thing, you almost want to move him if you're going to get the advantage creator type. But then again, do you want to when Jimmy Butler is kind of aging like this? That's what it's just like. What is the name, I guess, that makes sense for the Heat? And so, yes, if Donovan Mitchell's available, sure, I would definitely sniff around Trae Young, but they're never going to have, unless they include Jaime Jaquez, which I would not for either of those guys. I just think at that point, how is your team that much better off? But it's like, what, like they're never going to have the best offer. So who is the player that they could feasibly acquire that Donovan Mitchell feels most realistic because one is does something happen in Cleveland, which we should probably just talk on that series very quickly since they're not playing tonight. And then he's entering free agency. So he'll have the threat of his player option, like being able to leave after a year. That would help sort of mandate where he goes.
I mean, Zach LaVine, if you're not trying to give up all of your stuff, like is Zach LaVine someone that you think about like that, then you may just be in real trouble there. And he's not like a huge advantage creator.
What if he's willing to delete as part of the trade his no trade clause and it's just salary ballast for Bradley Beal?
So you're giving up.
It would
Hero.
be, I think if you could get them to take it's Duncan Robinson plus Terry Rozier or Tyler Hero. That is the basis of the trade. I didn't even do the math in my head. I think that should work because what are Tyler Hero's at 29. Oh, Terry Rozier is a lot less. He's at like 25. But I mean, Duncan Robinson's at 19. So 25 and 19, that's the lowest number. That still gets you to 44, which what is Bradley Beal at? Maybe it doesn't get you there.
Over 50. Can I just say,
there needs to be more money.
I'll just throw in, I don't know.
He's at 50. So it's just but like you're not going to include Jovic in that deal here in Miami. You're running out of if you get with Tyler Hero, so it's 29 and 19. Okay, we're at 48. Now we're basically there. So that's fine. So would you consider? So Bradley Beal says, but I will get rid of my no trade clause after this move. So then in your head, if you're the Heat, you could say, well, maybe we can like turn Bradley Beal into more than we gave up to get him. Would you consider something like that?
I would, from Phoenix's perspective, anything that's going to get me like 2 bodies for 1 that I can actually play. I definitely would consider that. And yeah, like if getting off of a Beal with a no trade clause, what do you like? He feels duplicative. This has been the take all along. So it's just better to have more guys. Like, just give me more guys. I keep talking Phoenix's perspective. I know we're on Miami. Like, do you think Beal is enough of an advantage? You said advantage creator. Like, is he
not this season? He wasn't. Just like rim pressure basically dissolved.
It's hard to tell.
Who's the guy then? It's just who's the guy? I'm not saying if it's not Bradley Beal, then who? That's not what I'm saying. It's just like who is the actual what are we? Does it have to be a megawatt star? Does a DeJounte Murray do? I don't know.
I think it almost does because the Heat's offense is so anemic that and Butler getting a year older, like he really slipped as a finisher, as just a general shot creator, and missed time. Like you gotta get someone in there that's gonna get your offense up into like the mid-teens. You can't be in the 20s anymore if you're serious about contending, which Miami really always is. So yeah,
this is we're at the point of the discussion where I feel like if I haven't made it clear, if I were the Heat, I would seriously consider seeing what can we get for Jimmy Butler. And because can you still win games? Like, are you going to get enough stuff to turn around and trade for somebody else? It's not aligning, especially because you're mentioning it almost has to be a third star. We've just kind of seen that if you're going to have all these stars, it's one thing if you're the Magic and you're thinking about going out and getting somebody and you're going to have Paolo and Franz and maybe Suggs, they're on their rookie scale extensions. But like when you have guys on their third and fourth contracts and they're up towards these 30 and 35% maxes, it seems like now fleshing out a team with that structure, I won't say impossible because nothing's impossible, but it's uber difficult. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm Miami, I'm at least testing the Jimmy Butler waters. The caveat there being I go through just the list of teams and it's who, because if you're going to go, not that this would ever be a decision, but if you're a team looking at acquiring Paul George or Jimmy Butler, you might view Butler as the superior player, certainly during the playoffs. Paul George is just the easier fit in an ecosystem that's already set up. Yeah. And so I would at least test the waters here. I think the Heat are I know they just made the finals last year, but I don't see the move unless it just ends up like if it costs less than we would expect it to for them to get Donovan Mitchell because he's nearing free agency. Sure. But I don't think, I mean, maybe they view the 3-star model as more sustainable for them because they trust that they'll just find guys, a Haywood Highsmith, a Caleb Martin, even just sort of like having Jovic. So maybe they trust that in themselves, but I don't see the out because I just don't ever envision them having the best offer or close enough to the best offer in a blockbuster trade package right now.
Yeah, I know this is like I don't mean this as pushback, but like who's the Jimmy Butler team? Because he's a lot to take on for like a lot of reasons. Like you have to be looking at teams that view themselves
Philly.
Yeah, right. So I was thinking like, well, the Sixers. No, I don't think that's happening. Although it is different ownership.
Do you think
or not management? But
I guess the Knicks would consider it. That's not the guy for them. They need someone who's just a little bit. I mean, I would prefer someone if I'm the Knicks who's younger, but I don't. The culturally, he probably does fit, but it's just he's at an age and he's so not plug and play at this point that you would be, if nothing else, infringing upon what Jalen Brunson is doing. So I don't know that those two would complement each other very well. I mean, like, does New Orleans make any sense? They need someone who's kind of a better shooter, but he would, I mean, what are you giving up to get him though? Like, does a BI Jimmy Butler trade kind of just like challenge, like the Heat, like we'll get younger and a little cheaper, and the Pelicans are like, fuck it, we're just gonna get someone who's elite.
Right. Yeah, we'll get a legit second star. I mean, like, Paul to the Clippers for Paul George. We just like swap.
Okay. What about like, would a Trae Young Jimmy Butler challenge trade like as the basis make any sense?
What's he gonna do in Atlanta if they're like hanging around 500 with the like? I'm so scared. That's the thing. I'd be more concerned of like you go from because Jimmy Butler just all the Minnesota stuff, and then I guess like I say like and then Philly, but Philly was just like they decided to pay Ben Simmons instead, and that pissed them off, and like that was the correct way to feel about that decision. Is that right? That's basically what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So like
basically.
Maybe if we're just holding Minnesota against him as like a malcontent thing, like that's not totally fair. Because
how about not in your backyard, but near and dear to your heart, Wiggins' salary, and then you're not giving up any of the youngsters, basically. You're definitely not giving up. You don't give up Kuminga. You don't give up Pods. Maybe if they want Trace Jackson Davis, but it's picks, salary for Jimmy Butler. You're the Warriors. Do you consider it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like his shooting issues are like, well, how do we pair him with Draymond and like a whoever the big is that doesn't shoot? That's a little iffy. But like he's just if it's this version of Andrew, if it's anything other than the great 6 months version of Andrew Wiggins, like you take Jimmy Butler over him all day. That's although like, man, that's so now you've got the luxury tax issues are going to be insane. Like Clay is gone probably if you do that, just because you can't pay him.
They're technically, if they waive Chris Paul, they're just like out of the tax before factoring in Klay Thompson. So they might not be as challenging. They would be a tax team, but I don't think they would. I think you could trade for Jimmy and then re-sign Klay, and you're not this like second apron monster.
If you run it back as Miami, is there a reason to be optimistic next year will be different than this year? Is there enough like organic growth from Jaquez and Jovic and like maybe Hero stays healthier? You get a full season of Terry Rozier. Like it's not crazy to say that the Heat could just be a little better. Like I don't think they can be a lot better, but they could. And that does feel like kind of I always assume the Heat are going to star hunt no matter what and be bold and like semi-reckless sometimes. But like there's also just the faith in like the guys they already have and internal development that they lean on a lot. So I mean, it's not as fun for purposes of discussion, but like, I think there's a version of this Heat team next year that's just, 5-6 games better in the standings. And maybe and if they're a little luckier on the health front, like, I don't know, that's, Butler's age makes that hard to bank on, but there's a non-zero possibility that they just keep it together and are really good next year.
I think is the actual most likely scenario, even if you're not including a star trade, let alone trading Jimmy Butler yourself. Would you expect them to make, let's say, like, you could probably even say, is there going to be a new addition to their starting lineup because their starting lineup was so fluid this year? Right. But do you expect them to, what's more likely that they run it back or they make a significant move? I'm not talking even just a star, but do we try and turn Tyler Hero into multiple players or vice versa with a Terry Rozier? They're almost only built for the mega move because of how high their primary salary matching tools are.
Yeah, I keep looking at Hero and Rozier, partly because they're kind of, I guess you wouldn't say it like mid-tier contract necessarily, but like the higher end of mid-tier contract figures, where it's like one or the other of those guys, you could, depending on what assets you're willing to attach, it's not like a marquee thing, but like maybe just a better fit or someone that's going to fill more of a need. But like, I don't know. The more I'm looking at the roster, it's going to get more expensive, maybe, depending on what like you need
Caleb
to do
Martin's
for
the big
Caleb Martin.
inflection
Yeah,
point there.
right.
Yeah.
And even like Kevin Love, that's way below Caleb Martin in terms of like, or how concerned are we? But like both of those guys, if they're back, are going to make a little more. Yeah, I don't know. Running it back is just, I threw that out there, but that's like, that kind of feels like maybe what they're going to do.
Any thoughts on Cavs Magic, the series that I think aside from Pacers Bucks, and a lot of that I think more so has to do with injuries, but there's been, I know Jared Allen missed game 5, but like there's been like the best players have been available in this series, and it's been, I wouldn't even say it's wonderfully chaotic. It's just absolutely unhinged. We finally had a close game though, so there was that.
Yeah, and it's like somehow you leave that game still not feeling like that great about either team. I don't know. Like this is, I guess the main thing for me is like looking ahead, and it sucks that Boston is the next team on the docket for whoever comes out of this series. It's like, what have we seen, if anything? And I know I'm just speaking rhetorically because my answer is not a lot that suggests either of these teams is like a true threat to do much going forward. And that wasn't expected of Orlando, but it kind of might have been of Cleveland. So like, yeah, I don't know. It's just the offense on either side isn't like intimidating. Darius Garland still has like moments, but then it's like, what's going on with him? I did hear, I don't know if you like when he broke his jaw,
5 at least. I think I was on, by the way, I think when we recorded, I don't know if it was after, he had a good game early in this series. Like, oh, it looks like Darius Garland's getting frisky again. Then Craters has a good game 5. That's part the Heat just being, when they're at or close to full strength, being more of a wild card in terms of just what to expect from them than when they're shorthanded. It's just so bizarre. Did I say the Heat? I meant the Cavs. It's just so utterly bizarre. And I don't know if is like Donovan Mitchell still dealing with the, like, he's just been injured all over the place. Darius Garland has been hit in the face every 5 seconds, apparently. Is this some of the ill effects of still, specifically with Mitchell, whose series has been not great? And I feel like now people are kind of rewriting what he does in the playoffs. He's had some epic, this is not like a playoff wilter. He's had epic moments in the playoffs. The fact that he is shooting for the series, as I looked up, he's shooting 8 of 35 from 3. So it's only 22.9%. And so just like, that's actually surprising to me. Like, this isn't, oh, Donovan Mitchell's just Donovan Mitchell it up again. No.
Yeah, I think it's at least, I feel like the trend is going the wrong way for Donovan Mitchell in terms of postseason reputation, but like all the stuff he did 3-4 years ago, that still counts when he was just unbelievable. Like, and the worst thing you can say is like, it's been a little hit or miss and like a few more misses lately. And he's clearly like not 100%. I was going to say about Garland, I didn't know this, should have intuited it, that like when he broke his jaw, he couldn't eat and he lost a ton of weight. And it's just like, that's hard to come back from if you're trying to ramp up and get your conditioning back up.
Especially going up against this defense, which I do think you need to credit Orlando with what they've been able to do to Donovan Mitchell. He seems very just like not necessarily visibly, but like his game has been definitely frustrated, thrown off kilter by, I mean, Jalen Suggs specifically has spent a lot of time, but also what looms large now. So you have the Gary Harris hamstring injury. That's the guy you turn to like do a lot of shit for you on defense. I think this series, I think it's only reinforced how I feel about the Magic, which is they are in a great spot moving forward, but there needs to be an infusion of offense that takes the form of whether it's separate players or one player. Okay, there's kind of another floor general type here. It doesn't need to be a Trae Young who manages the entire game because we have Paolo and Franz and even Suggs, but it does need to be a playmaker, a floor general type, and there needs to just be like shooting, like floor spacing, better floor spacing.
it's really interesting how a series where the through line has been like both teams have looked really terrible for stretches of it. It's so different because with Orlando, like you said, like yeah, clearly Orlando needs stuff. Like everybody knew that coming in, and it's just we know what the things are that the Magic need, so it's like not that complicated, and they have the resources to go get them. It'd be nice if there were more options in free agency, but like it's just like there's no mystery. Whereas with Cleveland, it's like, well, now we're all just talking about like, do we need to break up the two bigs? Do we need to break up the two smalls? Does Donovan Mitchell's imminent departure like the changes for Cleveland in kind of even though they're kind of playing similarly to Orlando are like seismic and wholesale and like we're talking about like the soul of the team. Where with Orlando, it's like yeah, they need a couple guys. We understand that. Like that's all the young guys look good. We got a bunch of pieces. It's funny that like. Yeah. Just the same series can give you such different takeaways from two different teams that are like kind of, I don't know. It just, I guess you said it first, but like, I guess if I have a main takeaway from it, it's that like I feel pretty good about Orlando, and I do not feel very good about Cleveland. Yeah, that's with Evan Mobley playing well, and like that block he had to seal Game 5 was huge. Like
I saw people just like, oh, Franz gave him that one. And it was like, if you think Franz made the wrong decision, like that was a really good timing block.
Yeah, what do you want?
By Evan Mobley. So by the way, quick thing on the Magic defense stuff. Fewer than 10% of Donovan Mitchell's possessions against Jalen Suggs are ending in a shot attempt or free throws. That's a dub for the Magic.
That's what you call clamps.
There's turnovers. There's just getting the ball out of his hands, or maybe even not letting him get the ball. But like that's absolutely massive. But you should, as Cleveland, still have enough residual talent or supporting cast to counter that and be better on offense than you've been overall. Being under 30% from three, I'm more uneasy about Cleveland than I've ever been. And it's just, I don't know what they tried the Jarrett Allen injury. It not force them, but it invited them to play small. Now, I just don't know what to make of a team that decided, okay, Marcus Morris might be a little more important in this series than George Niang. I just don't know what to do with that. And it doesn't seem like.
I did a double take when I saw Morris on the floor in Game 5, and it was just like, man, it's like the Paul was like, who'd have thought?
I'm going to take a small victory lap there where we were doing our playoff preview. I said, it just feels like Marcus Morris might become too important to a team in the year 2024.
That's exactly right. He is too important to it's way too important for the Cavs.
But they seem to be struggling, and maybe is this a JB Bickerstaff thing overthinking it, but like, we can't find more minutes for Sam Merrill in this series. Like if you're really trying to give yourself more of a puncher's chance when it comes to shooting, and you have other guys who've struggled so much. I mean, even Karis LeVert has been huge for them all year. Like this has not been a good, not great, like just not a good series for him. So, and there are some guys that you just expect to shoot better. Donovan Mitchell being one. Max Strus has struggled from beyond the arc. The Magic just put a lot of pressure on you, though. Mm-hmm. I feel more uneasy about Cleveland in the sense of what if they lose in the first round. The season's a failure. The goal was to win a playoff series, and they were healthy enough when it mattered most. Like the fact that they were able to navigate the regular season so well, and they get to a point where they're fuller strength technically in the playoffs, mm-hmm. unless you're just saying, no, Mitchell's banged up, Garland's banged up, now Jarrett Allen is banged up. Okay, fine. But the goal of this series to improve upon last year, you win a playoff series. You actively, not all year, but you kind of orchestrated this matchup by the end of the season. And that's
there's no kind of, like they really did. Like they kind of picked this one. And like, it's not just that they are, I mean, they are, I don't know. I think Cleveland's still going to win the series, but it's like, you kind of wanted this matchup, and it's a matchup that's like, it's got all these boxes you tick for like why you should win it, like lack of experience, like glaring offensive flaws, like stuff that typically talking about Orlando. That's like, okay, they're super beatable. Like I don't know. I want to pivot real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, I know you aren't as fixated on the Donovan Mitchell of it all as I tend to be with the Cavs, and like, what effect is that having, if any? I do think it's not a good thing that like Donovan Mitchell seems to be everyone's pick to be, he's going to be gone. Like I think that, but like, doesn't that sort of simplify some of the situation for you if you're Cleveland? Cause like you do need to make changes, and like, here's this one piece that like, well, I mean, the circumstances just, it's gotta be him, cause we don't want to lose him for nothing. Like, does that factor into your thinking?
My issue with that is I have a higher confidence level in this dual guard setup working long term than I do in the dual big setup working long term. There's no issues with the dual bigs defensively. And have you seen enough from Evan Mobley to say, like, looking at the offense, like, we just know if we don't have Donovan Mitchell, we're just going to run a lot of units, whereas Mobley is on his own and going to be getting a ton of offensive. You still need, if Donovan Mitchell requests a trade, or you decide we need to break this up, and because he's about to be paid on a higher max level than a Darius Garland or an Evan Mobley, let alone a Jared Allen, who remains a steal, that he's the guy, just the risk of him leaving, or he asks her out, whatever. You still need to get someone back who is going to optimize your offense through these, I don't want to say imperfections, but what are still functional warts, because unless Mobley's going to become, this is just, I don't mean to oversimplify it. I'm not speaking to you. I promise I've seen a lot of Evan Mobley. I think Evan Mobley is a fantastic basketball player, but unless you just get Evan Mobley to take more threes, there's always going to be a half court awkwardness to Cleveland's offense. How do you move Donovan Mitchell and not make yourself better, but ensure that you don't exacerbate the issue because you've just gone, you lose his floor spacing and his shot creation, which neither is serving you well right now. I understand that. How does that make you better? And if he's asking for out, it's not about getting better. It's about, well, we need to recoup as much as we can for this asset that is going to leave, but that still doesn't, moving him, I would say, if it doesn't exacerbate, it complicates, or it doesn't get rid of your longest term concern, because to me, your shortest term concern might be what's happening with Donovan Mitchell. My longest term concern is, what is the best way to optimize this front court?
That's a really interesting point. I think for me,
like, are interesting.
This is the most interesting point you've made in the last 6 to 7 minutes. No, it's fascinating because, like, I think what's unfortunately maybe the case is, like, it's not either or. It's like neither the two small guards nor the two non-spacing bigs works, and so you got to trade two guys. But like what I'm interested in is so, like, with Mobley, one, it's not just shooting more threes. I think for that pairing to really work, he's also got to be, like, pretty comfortable off the dribble, like doing like more combo forward shit, like real, like not just he's spotting up. Like spotting up would be great. That's the starting point. Like if he's going to shoot and make a decent clip of like 6-7 threes a game, something like that. Like that's your bait. Like
you want him to make 6 or 7 threes a game.
I want him to become the greatest 3-point shooter in the history of the NBA. No, get up 6 or 7, make 2, whatever. 3 would be phenomenal. Especially if you're shooting 6, then he would again be the greatest 3-point shooter ever. Like it can't just be that though, I think, because that's still like such a one-dimensional offensive piece. Like that one dimension's cool, but like part of the reason that Towns and Gobert make more sense than this pairing is like Towns will put it on the deck for straight line drives and get fouled. Towns will post up mismatches. Like Mobley doesn't have those dimensions to the degree Towns does. That's not a fair comparison. Towns is an awesome offensive player, but like it can't just be that. At the same time, Garland and Mitchell are going to be the same size with the same games, like going forward. The fact that Mobley could add those things is part of the reason I still am like more open to breaking up the two small guard thing than the Mobley Allen bit, because Mobley might develop. Whereas like Garland's always going to be small, always going to struggle to finish. Mitchell or whatever other small guard it is, not going to grow, so you can hope for change and growth because of Mobley, but I don't know, like, but he's got to get like a lot better at more than one thing to make that work.
So the stuff you describe, I actually think he can already do most of it on the offensive end.
In ways
and the reason that you're not
like in ways that make him a priority for your coverages, you think? Like,
well, here's my thing is that there are two factors that are at play here. Is he will never have, it's kind of similar to Bam, where he's never going to be that type of a priority because he's always going to be playing with at least one other primary ball handler. Mm-hmm. And then if you're going to compound that by having, I would say, a good amount of minutes, because we've seen them staggered, but where he has another big, and it just simplifies the way that you can defend this team. What is the pathway that all the stuff you outlaid, aside from the shooting for Mobley, how does that make the Cavs more dangerous when he's playing with Jared Allen?
Yeah, it would have to be like a level of offensive development that makes him kind of like almost like a Siakam, like offensively, like where it's just like you can ISO him against like size matchups.
because we've seen them run some too big stuff together. That would need to become more of a staple in the sense of, is Evan Mobley this really dangerous pull-up jump shooter?
Yeah,
And that's a
right.
different
That feels a long
level
way off
of
if
development.
he's ever
Because
gonna
even
get.
Bam is just, he'll get it going from the mid-range, but you're not worried about Bam pull-ups if your defenses. You'll
Yeah,
concede
right.
those.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm holding on to all of my Evan Mobley is gonna be the greatest
Well,
big.
but I don't think that you're wrong. My point is that for Evan Mobley to be that player,
Mhm.
it feels like it's not, he won't get there because they have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. It's because of the front court setup. And I fully recognize that maybe Evan Mobley at the 5 right now is not what you want defensively. You certainly need different types of wings in there if that's the route you're going to go. So I'm not saying that it's a perfect solution, but I have just as much belief in Evan Mobley's potential pinnacle as you do. I do not think the Cavs are currently built, and the two guard stuff could be part of this because of the agency that'll always have over the offense. But he seems to be the player that might be more marginalized than anyone as the result of this setup. And I don't think that, because there's not functional awkwardness necessarily with him, Mitchell, and Garland. It's the functional awkwardness stems from the Allen set, and it's purely an offensive concern for me. The defense is just, I don't understand why this team just won't grab rebounds. I know that Evan Mobley's not always near the basket when he's defending, but they need to be a lot, like, overall on balance. Like, this shouldn't be a team. I haven't looked at their rebounding numbers specifically during the playoffs, but yeah, I mean, you're 14th out of 20 teams, including playing teams, in defensive rebounding rate. You have two bigs. I know that you stagger them, but like, there's just not. So
There's that, and I guess I made the Towns Gobert comparison, and it's like, even with an offensive second big as gifted as Towns, the Wolves offense is still not very good. So it's just like, unless you think, and Allen and Gobert are kind of like occupy a lot of the same spaces, have similar strengths and weaknesses, not the same player, but like, even if Mobley became as good and complete of an offensive player as Towns, like, it's just, you'd just rather have that at center, right? Like, maybe that's all it is. Like, even if Mobley hits the absolute pinnacle, the absolute peak of his abilities, well, then why do I want a second big out there? Like, he should just do that at center with 4 wings around.
Isn't this kind of and I hate coming back to this as an analog, but isn't this sort of Cleveland trying to play Bam Adebayo at the 4?
A little
basically?
bit. And the Heat don't do that anymore. So it's like, maybe we should follow suit. Yeah, no, I think maybe that's the best. So you kind of sold me then, because like, my idea,
I want to be clear, he's the last one. I'm not saying move Evan Mobley. He's of the 4, he is still the last player I would move.
Right. 100%. Easily. Like, I would move 2 of the others before I moved him. Like, that's just, he's the one you hold on to. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, part of me just wants it to work. Part of me wants to see like a 2 big setup be successful. And the Wolves are sort of doing that, but not offensively. You know, it doesn't work.
I want it to work because I love the idea of, one, not just teams in non-glamour markets, but 2, teams that are not on these wish lists of stars who become available, to take the risk that Cleveland did. And even with that Minnesota did, it was definitely different because Rudy Gobert didn't have the clout to be like, I will only go here. So,
right.
But Donovan Mitchell could have, he didn't. And so I love seeing, we came on here, I mean, we celebrated both trades.
Mm-hmm.
So I want it to work out because I want to see other teams, like even just what Milwaukee did with Dame. It's a little bit easier because they have one of the 3 to 5 greatest players in the world, and Cleveland did not. So I want to see teams that are not on these lists, teams like that don't have the entrenched top 5, top 10 guy, teams that are in these you want them to be as aggressive as these other teams are, not necessarily mortgaging their future for the wrong guy. That's one of the reasons I want it to work. I'm not rooting against the Cavs. That was the thing I was wrong about, is I thought anyone who was, well, you should look at trading Donovan Mitchell. This is going to work out. I was shitting all over them at the beginning of the year. And I still think it was, you don't make that decision now. You didn't give up all that for Donovan Mitchell just to then move him after one season. Mm-hmm. Like you don't do that unless if he came and said, I don't want to be here, which doesn't seem like he did. Dan Gilbert argues the exact opposite. So I'm rooting for it to work out. It's just getting harder and harder for me to envision it working out.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I don't know if we've talked, if I've put you to the actual question, like, would you trade Donovan Mitchell this summer?
if he's not willing to sign an extension or just re-sign, yeah, you can't let it go to you can't let it go to free agency. You can't in this day and age. And there will be, maybe you could get to a point where if we move him as part of a sign and trade, but if you need to know this by the end of the summer, because if you go into the season, you will still get stuff for him, but the offers will be like, you might cost yourself a first round pick or maybe more than that. And if you're going to trade him to a team, like teams tend to be more desperate in the off season, even though more moves happen. There's this flurry of action at the trade deadline because it's that truncated deadline. But over the offseason is when teams are making the really big decisions. The James Harden trade is like sort of an anomaly. The Pascal Siakam trade, Pascal Siakam's a great example. I thought the OG trade was one of those where it worked out for both teams. The Raptors feel like they probably should have gotten more for Siakam when you look at what they actually took to send him out. And so that feels like a move that should have been made sooner at the latest over the offseason rather than in the middle of this year. And so, yes, if he's saying that he's not sure, then you need to at least consider it. And if he's telling you he's leaving, you need to listen to him and you need to flip him.
And the thing is, like, the clock's always ticking, and like the assets available or that teams are going to be willing to trade will always diminish, because odds are, if we're talking a Donovan Mitchell trade, the acquiring team is viewing it as a rental, because like unless it's one of the teams he really wants to go to and you can engineer it that way.
The Lakers, if it's the Heat, I don't,
But in terms of like, if you're just trying to get the best offer, because some of those teams will be like, well, we'll just sign him. He's going to opt out. Like that's fine. We don't need him.
Well, your benefit is like the Heat and the Lakers are teams that wouldn't have cap space. And so like, that's where your leverage is.
Right. But it's just, the point is, to me, like, I think you do get into a Siakam situation if you wait until the deadline, just because like now we're talking potentially a couple months that we get this guy. And like, if that results in a conference finals berth, like, okay, price was worth it, but teams are going to want a full season of him.
I do think, even though, so they would be in a weird spot where so let's say Donovan Mitchell says he will stay. So that's off the table.
Then what? That's almost more interesting.
It's more, but then then what do we do? Because they have the luxury of time when you look at the age of their primary players, but they don't have the luxury of patience. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So, because you know all this stuff about the fit issues. Like,
and so then do we give this another year knowing he's going to be here? Or do we try and make these changes now? Because let's say we give it another year. Let's say he signs an extension or he's going to re-sign anyway, but then is there a ticking clock? Like, does another year of this kind of make someone else disgruntled? And then you're working from a position of weakness, because even if they have all these years left on their deal, you would still be trading, whether it's Garland or whatever, someone who's just doesn't want to be there. That is the more interesting outcome, because you have to decide between, and this will look very stupid if they beat the Magic, somehow beat the Celtics. So, but I can't envision it. And I think I might have said, aside from the Bucks, I thought they were going to be the biggest threat to come out of the East this year, preseason takes. So I don't really know. They're a team that's under some offseason pressure. That's for sure. Even and if they don't, like, if there's a game 7 to that Magic, my God,
then you will never hear the run up to that will be all about the Mitchell stuff and all about the ticking clock and all about it's just, you really don't want that if you're the Cavs. It's just going to exacerbate all of the issues everyone's talking about already. Yeah, man, that was a long time on the Cavs.
Stat padding interrupted you. They wait for no one, Grant. I didn't think you were gonna continue trailing off there. If I have to put an ad marker there, that'll be a little bit choppy. I try to make them smooth transitions, but I'm stat padding over Grant.
Always.
Anything. Do we want to do, you said you had some guess of players, sister. You want to do like 2 guess of players each, since we're already, oh my God.
We're way along already. Yeah, let's do, okay. I have one for you from Mike. Let me make sure we haven't done it. We haven't done it. All right, Dan, clue number 1. I was drafted in the late first round in 2009. One shot kill.
Round, so it's not my good friend Jordan Hill. Late first round. I just want to take a stab. Who was drafted in 2009? Kurt Heinrich. Was that a 2009 draft? No, that was earlier. That's too late.
I think that was earlier. Valiant effort. You have to guess on the first one. That's almost like a new unwritten rule, because the success.
There was. We're not going to tell them what it was, but there was an off-air one-shot kill by me.
That's
can't
true.
use it, but
can't use it. I gave too good of a hint about the player, and no, I don't want to take any credit. You just one shot killed it. Clue number 2. I immediately was my team's starting power forward as we made the playoffs in my rookie season.
In 2009. Was his rookie? Oh no, wait. You said late pick. All right, yeah. No, I still got nothing.
All right, clue 3. After my second season, the team signed an all-star that was supposed to take my starting spot, but he broke his hand in preseason, meaning I started the first 15 games before moving back to the bench. I averaged 7 points and 5 rebounds in 19 minutes a game. Impressive, given that I was a young player on a team with a coach notorious for not using his bench or young players. It's a good clue.
Team starting power forward.
I'm trying to think who that was.
I'm trying to think of signed in. Oh, is this? No, that's way too late for Luol Deng, right?
It is not Luol Deng.
Team. I was thinking Tibbs as the coach. All right, keep going.
Clue 4. Over the next 4 seasons, I would start a combined 13 games, but put up great sixth-man numbers.
Wait, one more time.
Over the next 4 seasons, I would start a combined 13 games, but put up great sixth-man numbers.
And this is someone who played power forward?
Now I think I remember who the broken hand power forward was.
No, I still got nothing.
Okay. Clue 5. After some surgeries slowed me down, I was traded at the 2017 deadline along with Doug McDermott for Anthony Morrow, Joffrey Laverne, and Cam Payne.
I was traded. What deadline was this?
2017 with Doug McDermott for Morrow, Laverne, and Cam Payne.
So this guy, so it's a Bull, because isn't McDermott on the Bulls at this point? Who am I blanking on? The position is throwing me off.
I feel like
Man,
you are.
I hope the team's not throwing me off too. God
you
damn.
are all over it. You're just like you're stepping on it right now.
I guess I need the next clue. I can't believe
all
this.
Right.
My God.
Clue
this
6.
Is draft. I'm sorry. Drafted in 2009.
Yes.
Bulls. Oh my, is it? No. 2009. Wait, no. Continue.
Okay.
I'm going to say the name because it's so egregious. Go
okay.
ahead. Oh. Is it? No, go ahead.
Clue 6. The following off season, I signed to reunite with my old coach and decided to switch my jersey number to represent the high school I went to. I became only the second player in NBA history to wear this number. I started all 82 games and had my second best scoring season of my career this year, coming 5 years after my next best scoring season.
Taj Gibson?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's Taj Gibson.
I thought 2000. I have no sense of timing because 2009 felt too late, and it's like that was 15 years ago. So it's
so is the power forward with the broken hand? Is that Carlos Boozer? Because he
must have been that's the only all-star power forward I remember the Bulls signing.
Because I was trying to think because it's like I didn't remember the 6-man stuff for some reason. Let's see, and you would have got it like basically on every subsequent clue. In 2019, I signed with the Knicks, but was waived. I was re-signed by the Knicks 6 weeks later, then waived the following season. And 22, I played 49 games for a not quite terrible yet Washington Wizards. Re-signed for 23, failed to make the team's opening day roster. And then more Wizards stuff. Ultimately finished the season with Detroit. Forgot about that. I am Taj Gibson. Good job. I could tell you were just like, there was no scenario where you weren't going to get him pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right. I have one. I'm just going to preface this with, if you don't get this one, it'll break my heart. It's from Rubik's Gal, who I did not respond to when she sent it because I'm friggin' frazzled this time of year and behind on so many of my correspondence. Does that sound professional?
I would like to say I don't appreciate the added pressure of expectations.
No, the partnership will be dissolved if you don't get this one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, wrap it up.
And there's only 4 clues. So if you're gonna one-shot kill this one, it's time.
I'm really scared.
Clue 1. I am the last person from Team X to wear the number 6 uniform, having been grandfathered in along with a handful of other players across the league when the NBA retired the number in honor of Bill Russell in August 2022.
I'm so bad with numbers. Like I bet you could give me if you said
Ooh, that's
just
going to have to
pick,
be a stat padding segment.
pick oh my god. Say like tell me the numbers of everyone that made like an all NBA team this year. Of the 15 guys, I might get like 4. Like I'm
I
so
respect it.
bad at I'm so bad at the numbers. I never remember.
I'm bad
So
at knowing who went to what college. That would be me I would just be over.
suffice to say, I'm gonna need another clue.
You're not going to get it on this one.
There's only 2 after this.
Clue 2, my half-brother Tyler Myers plays for the Vancouver Canucks, making us the only pair of brothers to play in the NHL and NBA.
Oh. I'm guessing Myers is not this person's last name. Because that would be too easy, and you said I wouldn't get it.
Is there anyone with the last name Myers in the NBA right now? Not even Bob is working in the NBA.
No, Pete Myers was a Bulls assistant coach and played for the Bulls, and I don't know where he went. Myers. It's not Myers Leonard. That would be exciting.
Not for some people.
I don't have it.
Clue 3. I was part of a draft day deal between Team X and the LA Clippers. The Clippers got Keon Johnson, while Team X got me and a 2024 second rounder. Incidentally, Keon Johnson was one of the other people grandfathered into wearing the number 6 jersey.
Okay, wait. So this guy goes in a deal
Clippers.
To the Clippers for Keon Johnson. So he's going from Portland, right?
The Clippers got Keon Johnson and
Okay.
Team X. I'm sorry. He's going. This player, I almost said his name, is going to Team X in exchange for the pick that became Keon Johnson and a 2024. This player and a 2024 second rounder got the Clippers Keon Johnson.
So this guy is on the
No, he's on.
No,
Team X.
it's the rights to the pick. Oh, I don't remember this.
This is the next clue is the one that will break my heart if you don't get it.
Oh, great. Okay, let's just get to it then, because I don't know it yet.
Clue 4. At the trade deadline this season, Team X dealt me and a bunch of end of rotation players, but don't tell this Team X super fan / ESPN pundit / professional yeller. He doesn't seem to know yet, and we would like to keep it that way.
Oh, I know. Who did Stephen A. not? Is it Quentin Grimes?
That is correct.
Oh, right. Thank God.
You still, I retain my affinity for you. My respect's a little bit lower. I feel like you should have known the Keon Johnson trade, but
no, I hadn't even have a guess for that one. Okay, man, that was intense. I didn't enjoy how that made me feel. That was hard. All right. You want another one?
Oh yeah, let's do one more each.
Let's see. All right. Also from Mike. I was drafted in the lottery in 2011 by the Jazz. You have a decent one-shot kill chance here.
I was drafted in the lottery in 2011. Derek Favors.
No, that's good. Good guess.
He was 2010, wasn't he? Damn it.
I don't know when he was.
Yeah, he was, because he was flipped the same year Melo was, which was 2011. Okay. So he would have been the 2010 class.
Clue number 2. My first 2 seasons were virtually identical, posting almost the exact same stats and shooting percentages. Don't think that's going to help you. You want to take a 2-shot kill attempt?
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Gordon Hayward?
Nope. Clue 3. I doubled my scoring average in season 3, averaging 14 a night and becoming a valuable bench player.
Still on the Jazz, I take it, since there was nothing about the trade. So we're 2011, 12. So we're like 2013 with the Jazz, 2014-ish. Like that'll help me. Yeah, no, keep going.
Okay. Clue 4, I became a starter in year 4, but broke my leg, leaving me to only play in 27 games. Following season, I had ankle surgery, once again limiting my playing time to only 31 games. This led to me slowly falling out of the rotation over the next 3 seasons.
Way too early for Dante Exum. Yeah, I got nothing.
Clue 5. In 2018, I was traded to Cleveland for Kyle Korver, where I would play 34 games, starting 24. I was then traded at the deadline that same season in a 3-team trade that saw the Cavs acquire Marquise Chris, Nick Stauskas, and Brandon Knight. I went to Sacramento. The Rockets acquired Iman Shumpert in this deal as well.
What year is this?
This is 18. I did not remember this guy playing in Sacramento. Now I do, but that's
The Jazz. No, I should know this one and I don't.
well. So yeah, Jazz, Cavs, Kings is the team order so far. Clue 6 makes me feel better. I played in 13 games for Sacramento, averaging 1 point a game. Pretty forgettable.
Yeah, that's not going to help me.
Clue 7. I think you might warm up here. I signed with the Warriors in 2019, playing in 48 games and averaging a career high 16 points a game, rejuvenating my career on a Warriors team in turmoil. I was able to turn this success into getting traded to the Sixers at the deadline, mere weeks before the pandemic screwed up the NBA season.
Is this Alec Burks?
It is Alec Burks.
Okay.
Very good.
My God, he's been around. I'm getting old. He's been around.
And then you would have got it here. In 2020, I signed a 1-year, $6 million contract with the Knicks and went on to average 12 a game, prompting me to re-sign for 3 years, $30 million, playing career high 81 games following season. Was he on one of the units? Remember the year where like the Knicks starters just got housed every game and the reserves had like this massively positive net rating, and we were all just like,
which season was that?
Was there more than one? There was one that I feel like I wrote about it like every week whenever you had to say something about the Knicks. 9. Ultimately, it wasn't good enough for the Knicks. I was moved on draft night to Detroit for the draft rights of some guy who's not yet played in the NBA, and also the cap space to sign some guy named Jalen Brunson. 10, I would play the next season and a half with the hapless Pistons, averaging 12 a game before being reacquired by the Knicks at the 24 deadline alongside Bojan Bogdanovic.
Those are good. That was a good pull. Let's have another one for you. This one is also for Mike. Clue 1. I was drafted out of high school in 1998 outside of the lottery.
High school 98. Oh, 98. Well, who else is drafted in 98? I want to try a one-shot kill, but I'm like blanking on anybody that might be there in 98. No, I don't have it.
Clue 2. At the time, I was the first player to be born in the 1980s drafted in the NBA.
Still don't have it.
Clue 3. I was a bit player my first 2 seasons, but in year 3, I started to feature more, starting 38 games and playing in 78, averaging 7.5 points and 4 rebounds a game. That's not going to help you.
No. Deshaun Stevenson. I know we've had him before.
No, that's a respectable guess, though.
Okay. Yeah, I don't.
Clue 4. The following season, I upped my scoring to 13.1 points, but missed the last 38 games of the season with knee injury.
Sorry, give me that one more time.
The following season, I upped my scoring to 13.1 points, but missed the last 38 games of the season with a knee injury.
98. Let's see. I want to say Darius Miles was like the 3rd pick or something. So I don't think right? He wasn't outside the lottery.
Not him.
Not him. It's not. I think DeMar Johnson was in the lottery, so it's not him.
Not him either, if that's any consolation.
98. That's such a. I can't remember. I need to remember like who the first pick in 98 was, and I can't. So I have like no. I don't know where we are. Okay. Next clue, please.
Clue 5. The next season, I came back with a vengeance, finishing 2nd in 6th Man of the Year voting.
Oh, outside the lottery in 98, good 6th man, and we're in like. We don't know. We're in like his 4th or 5th year, so it's early 2000s.
Yes.
Good 6th man. 14. Did you give me a scoring average from the year before when he got hurt? It was like 14.
13.1. Yes.
I do not have it.
Clue 6. 2 seasons later, I was traded to Atlanta for Steven Jackson, and in an alternate universe, if that trade never happens, the malice at the palace never takes place.
I was traded to Atlanta for Steven Jackson. Oh, I should probably have it by now, shouldn't I? Outside the lottery.
I think these next couple clues will be where you get it.
It can't. No. It's 98 is way too early for Lou Williams. It's not Lou Williams. I think
not Lou.
Traded to Atlanta from Indiana, right? Who the hell? This is really starting to bother me. I should probably have it by now. Atlanta, Indiana.
Ready for clue 7?
Yeah.
I was a starter for the Hawks for 2 years, but didn't have the same success. I was traded back to the Pacers for a first-round pick.
Are we sure this isn't from Austin? Indiana to Atlanta to Indiana for a first-round pick. This is bad.
Clue 8?
Yeah.
6 months after being reacquired by the Pacers, I was sent out to the Warriors in a deal involving 8 players and 0 draft picks. Also going with me were Zydrunas Jaskevicius, Steven Jackson, Josh Powell, and in exchange, Mike Dunleavy Jr., Troy Murphy, Keith McLeod, and Ike Diogo ended up in Indiana.
All right. So that's the... Didn't the Warriors get Al Harrington in that one too?
That is correct.
I
Nice.
forgot that he was a high school pick.
So you also had, this one might have helped you too. 9 months later, I was traded for Jamal Crawford and a move that sent me to the Knicks. Clue 10, I was far better for the Knicks than I was for the Warriors, as I averaged about 19 points a game at NYC over 2 seasons. I signed a multi-year deal with Denver, but was traded after 2 seasons in the Dwight Howard trade. And then went to Orlando, but only lasted a season before being waived. The next season, I would help the Wizards make their first playoff appearance in 5 years. And then final clue, I played a season in China, followed by a season in Australia before retiring to be a cannabis advocate. And also as of 2021, I was an assistant coach with the South African Basketball League.
Oh, wow. Okay. Man, I forgot about you did the Atlanta loop.
I forgot about that loop too.
Yeah, he must not have been. Well, you said he was in Atlanta for 2 years. Okay, man, good one.
Are you ready to take us out of here?
Yes. Thank you for listening. Thank you for contributing. Boy, we hit the 2-hour mark too. Thank you for listening to this point. If you did that, you're a hero. Special request this week because Dan has been shadow banned on Twitter because he's
that's what the kids are calling it anyway. Apparently, I'm a spam account.
You're a spammer. I've always thought that about you. It's pretty obvious. You deserved it. It's been a long time coming. No, that emphasizes or the importance of word of mouth. Tell your friends, tell your enemies about the podcast, rate, review, subscribe until Dan gets reinstated. Just tweet at Elon and see if he can just handle that for you. Or tweet
tell people about us, share links, do that. That's fine too.
Do that too. If you want to be able to contribute, guest players, stat padding, all that stuff, join our Discord. Links for that in YouTube and podcast description. Same place you can find links for our merch. And I think that's going to do it. We close as usual with a shout for Frank Ntilikina and an apology for Jared Allen, who we're trying to trade.